It is 7 p.m. If we could please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and welcome to our March 10th business meeting of the Milford Board of Education. Ms. Griffin is off tonight. She'll be back next meeting, I think. So I'll do the roll call. Megan Doyle.
Here.
Scott Fermender.
Present.
Tracy Irby is absent. Mr. Kova.
Here.
Lauren Muller.
Here.
Christina Preet.
Here.
Adam Scobie.
Here.
Mike Smith.
Here.
Cindy Wolf-Whiten.
Here.
Susan Glennon here. So the record will reflect 1 absent, 9 present, and one of the presents is remote. So we start off with student reports. I think Jonathan Law goes first. We have Addie Barber and Lee Baird.
Good evening, board members. It is a pleasure to be with you guys again. In academics, French classes are discussing Mardi Gras and how French ended up in Louisiana. They're doing Manet Musicale with an emphasis on learning about the French-speaking world through music. In our Spanish classes, some students are currently reading Los Ojos de Carmen, a level novel that not only strengthens language skills but also introduces them to the rich culture and geography of Ecuador, a country that is often underrepresented in traditional curriculum. This immersive experience allows students to engage with the language in a meaningful and culturally relevant way. Additionally, our World Language Department had the privilege of learning from 2 nationally recognized educators, La Maestra Loca and Ben Tinsley. Their insights provide us with innovative, research-based strategies to enhance language acquisition in our classrooms. As we continue our shift toward a more proficiency-based approach to language teaching and learning, these new ideas will help us create more engaging and effective experiences for our students. Health teachers are now certified instructors through the American Heart Association and will be certifying sophomores this quarter in CPR, AED, and First Aid during the Health and Safety 2 curriculum. All fitness testing is complete and the freshmen knocked it out of the park. What a highly motivated group, and we are very proud of them. This past month, the Cologne Scroll and English National Honor Societies had their induction ceremony. 60 kids were honored that evening. English 1 classes are working on podcasts about their book club books, and AP classes are gearing up for their exams in about 8 weeks. The English department is also using their collaboration time to discuss new courses that we would like to add to our elective offerings in the 2026-2027 school year. During Professional Development Day, our math department had the opportunity to work with the math teachers from Foran in 8th grade in an all-day workshop with one of the creators of the mathematic curriculum. On March 6th and 7th, the National Math Honor Society visited every math class for the annual Pi Olympics. Students competed in Pi-themed games and helped raise money for St. Jude's.
In Law Sports Action, the Jonathan Law Athletic Department would like to congratulate all of our winter athletes on a successful winter season. We are so proud of all our student athletes, including Sienna Batras, wrestling state champion, our girls basketball team for making the CIAC state playoffs and advancing to the quarterfinals. Furthermore, our hockey team faces New Milford in the first round of the CIAC state tournament tonight. Jonathan Law in Milford, Connecticut is well represented through the state with many great achievements, and we are so proud of them all. Junior Charlotte Baldieri and sophomore Madeline Nash earned all SEC honors for cheerleading. Congratulations to both girls. In our school counseling, college, and career department, Ms. Mundy has been supporting teachers in English and science as they start to experiment with students facing AI chatbots through School AI. Teachers are using it to help develop research questions, create thematic statements, provide evidence to support their claim, and as a reading check to what students remember from the text. Ms. Mundy is also on the AI committee and helped develop and present material for the half-day AI training at the Teacher Professional Development Day. She also attended Nerd Camp on a Saturday, a full day of learning from the CT Association of School Librarians. There she did networking, meeting authors, and learning from other school librarians. So far, the TLC has checked out around 700 books to students this year. Foran and Law worked together to have a joint military night at the public library on February 20th. Approximately 15 participants used this time to connect with recruiters from all branches of the armed forces. Post-high school planning is in full swing with the junior class. Counselors are meeting individually with all students and parents and guardians as we plan for the future. The counseling department held their annual sophomore symposium night on February 26th. We had representatives from Marist University, Southern Connecticut State University, Fairfield University, and Western New England University present to our sophomore students and families on topics that sparked and encouraged a college readiness mindset. We had over 60 families in attendance and received some wonderful feedback on the evening. Counselors have also started meetings with all students to embark on the course selection process. Most of our seniors have received word from multiple colleges on acceptances, and students and staff are very pleased with the outcomes we are seeing. Students are now comparing financial aid packages and making the tough decision on where to attend college next year. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you all tonight, and we look forward to the next meeting.
Thank you. Next we have Foran High.
Good evening, board members. It's a pleasure to be back once again this month to tell you about all the great happenings at Foran. Firstly, we'd like to start by congratulating the cast and crew of Foran's musical this year, which was Seussical. It was a great time for all who went and an even better time for all those who participated. In club news, Foran's Ski Club has had a fantastic winter, ending the season with an overnight trip to Jay Peak and Smuggler's Notch in Vermont. Great job, skiers. A huge thanks to the Giving Club table, who recently prepared a taco bar for a Milford School District family. They also prepared 2 soups for the Polar Plunge fundraiser at the American Legion in Milford Post 196. The American Legion raised $8,500 for Homes for Troops in just a matter of hours. Recently, the Foran Safe Promise Club has been working on a mural for the school, which is looking great so far. The mural hopes to place emphasis on spreading kindness around the school. We would also like to commend all those involved in the Foran Science Olympiad team, Sci-Lions, who sent 2 teams of 15 students each to the Yale Undergraduate Science Olympiad, where 63 teams from 48 different schools participated. Our 2 teams finished 30th and 32nd, gaining great valuable experience, hoping to prepare them for the Connecticut State Science Olympiad in March. In this competition, Hamid Anka and Andrew Tang medaled in air trajectory, Gianna Coppola and Wajiha Khan medaled in ecology, and Ava Goliter and Aiden Stay medaled in Fight It, Do It. Great job on all your hard work. Recently at Foran, we held a student and faculty art show in the TLC. Pieces included pottery, paintings, and drawings. The viewing showcased the creative and artistic talent of our school community. The AP seminar class at Foran had also just completed the first part of their AP exam, the team multimedia presentation. Great job, seminar students.
Also, in recent Foran news, 8th grade students from the middle schools came to visit Foran. The Natural Helpers Club helped tour students around the school, giving them information at each stop, as well as help to show them around the elective fair, helping to decide on classes for next year. Moving on to sports, we would like to extend a huge congratulations to the Foran wrestling team, who brought home a Class M state championship and was recently honored at the state capitol. In February, the Milford boys swim team completed its annual swim-a-thon for the Lionheart fundraiser, raising $3,000 for breast cancer research. Special thank you to Foran's freshman, Zach Shoup, for being the leading fundraiser among all SEC swimmers with $900 raised. Foran's own swimmers, Joe Lahab and Carter Shearer, have also qualified for states for their individual events. Amazing work to the boys swim for all your accomplishments. In basketball news, congratulations to girls basketball player Faith Doyle for being honored in the first team All-SEC, and Ava Diedelbaum for being honored second team All-SEC. In the same field, congratulations to Foran coach Kirkpatrick for being named SEC Boys Basketball Coach of the Year. Continuing on the same note, Foran gymnastic coach Slanka has also been named SEC Gymnastics Coach of the Year, and gymnast Kayla Johnson has qualified for state open championships to compete on bars, vault, and beam. Great job, Kayla. Finally, during February, the Foran Unified Sports Team hosted a basketball tournament with participants coming from Shelton, Amity, Law, and Daniel Hand, and playing in a round-robin tournament. It was a great display of our Unified Sports Team at Foran, and congratulations to all those who participated. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight, and have a great rest of your evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Students, feel free to head out and do whatever you might need to do this evening.
Thank you.
For being here. We'll see you next month. Public comment next. I'll read the public comment statement. Speakers may offer objective comments about school operations and programs. The board encourages speakers not to express personal complaints or defamatory comments about the Milford Board of Education personnel or any person associated with Milford Public Schools. Security issues and matters relating to negotiations and grievances will not be permitted. Consistent with the principles of the Federal Education Right to Privacy Act, discussion of students is prohibited absent parental waiver. Public comment does not allow for two-way conversation between speakers and the board, but we welcome and appreciate your comments and opinions, and all will be taken into consideration. Please note our meetings are televised and live streamed on YouTube. We ask that you state your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Do we have any people who'd like to address the board this evening for public comment? We have a podium right there.
So, good evening, everybody. My name is Tim Chaucer. I live at 104 Hawley Avenue. And it seems that every half a dozen, maybe dozen years, the issue of school consolidation comes up. And it seems to me as if it's an unnecessary issue. I knew Joe Foran, for whom Foran High School is named. And Joe Foran created, as many of you know, many of the neighborhood schools that we have in Milford. And he was a great believer in neighborhood schools for many reasons. And in fact, in those days, Milford was the envy of other towns. People said, I want to move to Milford because I believe in the neighborhood schools. If my child gets sick, I don't have to go a long distance to pick him up, and or maybe he can walk home. And middle schools are neighborhood schools as well, and there's a lot of arguments for having middle schools, more kids that get involved in activities. And of course, in Milford we have 2 high schools. We had 3. It was right here, Milford High. And it made sense back in the day to close one public high school. Milford had the trade school as well, so we ended up still with 3, but 2 public high schools at very distant ends of the town. So geographically, it makes no sense to bring this up every few years to consolidate law and Foran. It makes no sense at all for numerous reasons. Number one, just for a couple of reasons. Imagine the amount of time on a school bus if you had to go from Devon even to Central Milford or even all the way over to Foran or whatever. Think of all the sports teams that get more children to participate, cheerleading, newspaper, whatever. When you have more than one high school, you get twice as many kids to have that opportunity. And it's not, and I have heard people argue in the past, oh, we could have a super team if we combine the schools. We really could win a lot and have a super team, but that's not what it's all about, as many of you know. Now, in terms of enrollments can go down, but guess what? Enrollments then go up, and they go up and down, they fluctuate. Our schools are open spaces in Milford, and when you close a school, in a few years you may find out that you might have to build a new school. And the worst issue of all is it's always about contracts. And so the only people that I can see that benefit are consultants and lobbyists and architects and real estate people who know there's not a lot of buildable land in Milford, but oh boy, what we could do if we could get our hands on foreigner law. So it costs tax, and it always costs taxpayers more to build a big mega high school. So I hope you'll think about it long and hard and try to resist bringing it up every few years. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chaucer. So anybody else would like to address the board this evening for public comment? Okay, seeing none. Did you have anything you want to say?
Well,
I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I just couldn't tell.
I'll just briefly comment. Brad Richards, 7 Pearson Avenue, Milford. Very brief. Sorry, my water bottle. Had a great time. Thanks so much for hosting the last Foran community gathering. I'll just gently disagree with the former speaker. I think it's at least worth very much considering going to a single school. As someone who grew up in South Carolina with a single large school, I think places need to be nimble and change with times, and it's opportunity to think about if there's a place to do it. I do think there's a lot of benefit to increase, especially with school enrollments going down. Demographics do seem to be, projections having looked at it, look pretty stable. 5,000 or so students in our school district having consolidating one high school and then thinking about what to do with those other schools in terms of middle schools, so maybe 2 versus 3, and then opportunities for elementary schools. So just to say, think carefully. I appreciate all the consideration you've already done, and just encourage you to consider to be thoughtful about it. And I just appreciate the process you guys have been going through. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much. See no other public comment this evening? Okay, we'll close public comment and move on to Chair's report, sorry. So board members, I just want to remind you all that St. Patrick's Day Parade is Saturday, the 15th. Step-off's at 1 o'clock. Anybody that would wish to march in the parade, everybody's welcome. We typically meet at about 12:30 at the Wasson Field parking lot, so bring your green and be ready to, and your walking shoes. The Board of Finance will vote on our budget and the city budget on March 19th. And just a note that while we've shuffled around some of our non-essential reporting for our meetings to make room for long-range planning workshops, we're coming up onto some items that really can't be delayed. So you'll see some more things on our agenda. Policy work, we need to start to think about resuming that. We have some policies coming up that need to be revised before July 1st, I think would be. So we will start up with some policy work as well. So be looking at that for that on our agendas. Are there any liaison reports tonight? Okay. No. I did attend the PTA Council meeting just to generally update them on what we have been discussing at our meeting. So I'll turn the meeting over to Dr. Butaya for Superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Lennon. If I could just start with a moment of privilege to recognize the board for, because March is Board of Education Appreciation Month. So we just want to express our appreciation to each and every one of you for the volunteer work that you do that requires much more of your time than just 2 Mondays a month that people may not actually see. Though all the work that goes in between and in preparation for having a genuine dialogue about what is best for our students and staff here in Milford. And as a token of my appreciation, we have some Milford-made cookies for you. Don't eat them all in one sitting, but please enjoy, and please know that you are very much appreciated. Thank you. And moving things on to our instructional highlight, glad that we will be taking a look at the goings-on of our first year of esports. So I'm turning things over to Mr. Giancolo, Mr. Sibilis, Ms. First, and Mr. Dubuque. All maybe here?
He was unable to.
Okay. And other members who are here that I will lean on you to introduce, Mr. Giancolo.
Thank you very much, Dr. Taya and Board of Education members. Good evening. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about esports, how it fits into not only our sporting, a CIAC function sport, but also aligns to our curriculum and the work that we're doing to make this one thing very popular here in Milford, and be a true leader in Connecticut of esports here in Milford. So first I want to introduce Coach First, who is there in the corner, who will be called up in a little while to give us a little speech and tell us her experience. And Mr. Dubuque Coach Dubuque was going to join us as well, but something came up and he was unable to be here with us tonight. And we also have one of our players and students, Izzy is here from Jonathan Roth, who you'll also hear from as well. And then I just want to give a little shout out to Mr. Lippert, who has been assisting us with at Jonathan Law as kind of a volunteer coach, helping out. Very good player, is my understanding. And I also want to just give a quick shout out to Mr. Rosenthal from my department, who has been instrumental in going to the schools, making sure all the computers are set up, and really being that behind the scenes type person. And then of course, Mr. Sibulis, who I'm going to hand this over to now to give you all the details about esports, since he's the expert and has been heading this up completely. Mr. Sibulis, it's all yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Giancola and Dr. Vitaya. Good evening, Board of Education members. So I'm here to talk about something I'm personally very passionate about, and that's esports. These are very exciting times in the Milford Public Schools. Before going into what we've been doing in Milford with esports, I just want to speak to the broader esports picture. I also want to say Happy Mario Day. So March 10th can be abbreviated capital MAR10, so it's like a Mario thing. It's a thing, you know, it's a thing. So it's the perfect day to be giving esports presentations on Mario Day, right? So just talking about like the esports, right? So when we're talking about esports, what am I even talking about, right? So esports is short for electronic sports. These are multiplayer, team-based competitive video games. Professional teams and players face each other in competitions and tournament series for prize money. The esports industry includes multiple sources of revenue, including sponsorships, advertising, content creation and streaming, coaching, media rights, merchandising, and special events. The esports industry has created many new careers beyond that of the actual players, which I'll go into in more depth later in this presentation. Spectators pack esports arenas, as well as tune into live streams to watch their favorite players and teams compete. You may have seen some matches on TV, even on ESPN and ABC. Overwatch was on TV a while back. So as far as the growth of esports, let's just talk about how large the esports industry is and how large it's becoming. The esports industry is growing very rapidly. We're talking over $1 billion in value for the global esports market right now, with projections that it will grow to over $9 billion in 7 years. The esports industry is part of a larger global video game industry, which exceeds revenue of $200 billion. So that's larger than the global movie industry, music industry, and North American sports markets combined. Esports competitions themselves have prize pools that vary from thousands of dollars to tens of millions of dollars. The International Olympic Committee actually has created the Olympic Esports Games. So these games will take place in Saudi Arabia in 2027, with the road to the games beginning this year. Esports viewership rivals that of traditional sports, especially amongst younger demographics. And then, as you know, I talked about the Olympics in esports. What's another huge worldwide sporting event? There's an Esports World Cup tournament that just took place that had 500 million viewers consuming content and a prize pool of over $60 million. So that's $60 million that the players were able to compete for. So, okay, all these statistics, viewership, demographic data, revenue numbers, et cetera, they're nice, right? But there's many other benefits to esports beyond monetary. Esports are usually team-based, requiring teamwork and collaboration. Esports builds community, reaching and engaging students that wouldn't otherwise take part in organized school activity. Esports brings together a wide range of students with similar interests to work towards a common goal in a space they want to be in. Esports are co-ed and remove physical limitations. If you can use a computer or hold a controller, you can take part in esports. Esports has many of the same benefits that traditional sports has: working together, learning good sportsmanship, leading, problem solving, strategic planning, preparing as a group, critical thinking, and all of the other things, the positive things that come from taking part in traditional organized sports. There's also the technology literacy piece, learning how to hook up and use all the computers and gaming equipment, troubleshooting hardware and software issues, learning how streaming video and production works. Esports opens up a lot of education and career opportunities as well, which I'll go into next. So, esports careers cover a wide range of different fields. These are careers that are, there's the more obvious ones like esports coaches and analysts, right? But there's other things like content creators, event organizers, marketing professionals, business managers, legal professionals, financial professionals, coding and software engineers, IT support, cybersecurity, the list goes on and on. You can see here in this graph kind of how the different careers branch out from the core esports players and games. In addition, some of the most well-known universities, as well as colleges, local colleges and universities, offer esports and video game design degrees. These degrees include esports communications and management, esports and gaming, esports management, game and business and esports, games and simulation, as well as game design. Something very interesting is the same way that colleges and universities desire top athletic talent for traditional sports teams, esports players are also in demand. Esports is huge at the college level. More than 200 colleges and universities offer over $16 million in esports scholarships. This figure has doubled over the last 4 years. For instance, the National Association of Collegiate Esports
MACE for short, which is the main governing body for varsity collegiate esports, alone has awarded millions of dollars in esports scholarships and aid over the last 5 years. So let's talk about the high school level next. In Connecticut, esports are an official CIAC-sanctioned high school sport. In 2025, around 40 high schools in Connecticut have had at least one esports team. High school esports has grown around the US in general, with over 8,600 high schools starting esports teams since 2018. So, you may be seeing kind of that there's a potential pipeline and career path here, right? So I'm just gonna do a super informal kind of theoretical path. It's kind of like practice esports when you're younger, play esports for your school in high school, maybe middle school, and while you're taking esports courses, which I'll get to more in a minute, get a scholarship, play esports in college while studying, hey, I don't know, perhaps an esports related degree, and then graduate and get an esports related, or at least esports adjacent career. Sounds pretty good to me. So what are we doing here in Milford for esports? We have esports teams at both high schools, Law and Foran. This is our first year and our second season with official esports teams competing. Games have online matches after school once a week, Tuesday through Thursday, where Milford Public School students compete against students at other high schools, both in Connecticut for CIAC-sanctioned matches and across the greater East Coast via the Play Versus platform. At least one match is live streamed every day. In addition to match days, the esports coaches, like Ms. First over here, hold practices twice a week, Monday and Friday. These practices consist of, well, practicing, but also reviewing prior matches' live streams for ways to improve, strategizing for future matches, and labbing specific scenarios. Maybe situations or play styles that gave the players problems in a previous match. So these are the numbers of the students who participated in year one of our esports teams. Keep in mind, most students have already committed to another sport, and we didn't have an opportunity to reach middle school students as they were moving up to high school, because this is like a totally new thing. Even with these limitations, we had a total of 53 students participate across the 2 seasons. So, you can see now we've got, like Lewis said, we've got Coach First, Mr. Lippert, we've got Lizzie, one of our esports players from Law, from the Mario Kart team. So thank you guys for coming out tonight. I've been talking all this time, and I've been talking a mile a minute because I'm conscious of my time. So thank you for putting up with that. But I'm going to shut up for a few minutes because I want to ask the people who have been directly involved to kind of speak to everyone directly to tell us what their experience has been like. So if you don't mind, if 3 of you want to come up. So yeah, I just want to ask you about, I'll let you guys take back here. I know it's a very broad and difficult thing, right? It's like, oh my God, tell me about your esports experience in Milford Public Schools. But really talk specifically about, whatever you want with this and just kind of tell us what your experience has been like. Yeah, maybe Coach First if you want to start.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just as a quick introduction, this is our first year in this official sport. It has been such a privilege of mine to be able to take this team from where it began to where it is right now. I've had the privilege of being able to work with both Mr. Sibilis and Mr. Rosenthal over here, and as well as the rest of the board here, to create this environment which is going to help our children. It's really such a pleasure of mine to share something that's a passion of mine personally, to be able to provide all of these, not only these opportunities to play games at a collegiate level or potentially at a collegiate level, but also to be able to provide them opportunities to explore the different alleys and different opportunities that present themselves within the esports industry. Now, community creates a larger portion of this because people are learning to do coding, people are learning to do content creation, people are learning all of these different skill sets just by analyzing the games themselves. I spend a lot of my time talking to the kids about how they need to look at their inputs, look at what they're doing, parse out what they need to parse out about what their actions are, so that they can look at their own gameplay, look at the statistics, and be able to analyze it, not only through a mathematical level, but through a gameplay level that evaluates the psychology and different elements that are present in any sport. And we have one advantage that a traditional sport does not have, and that's the data that the game provides to us, which gives us more mathematical challenges that other sports don't have. So it's such a privilege of mine to be able to take a team and give them those analytical skills and also give them the opportunity to work with such amazing technology and provide literacy on a whole plethora of ideas that they would have never gotten to experience without this opportunity. So I just want to be upfront and say thank you for providing that opportunity, and I appreciate that. I'm gonna allow my assistant over here, Mr. Lippert, to talk a little bit about what he's providing and how he feels about the program.
Yeah, okay. Hi everyone, so my name is Mr. Lippert. My first name is Kess. I am currently studying to be a secondary education teacher in biology, and I currently coach the League of Legends team at Law. And I guess first I'd like to say some of the issues that esports faces in terms of swaying the public is that gaming is typically seen as a isolated activity, you know, someone just kind of like sitting in their room and playing games and not really talking to their family or their friends. And also because esports has the word sports in the title, people kind of scoff at that because they think, oh, these kids are just sitting down, they're just playing a game, they're not being aerobically active. But while you're not actually moving, you know, and running around like typical sports, you're very, very competitive and you have to communicate with your team. The League of Legends team, for example, they play every single day and work as a unit of 5. League of Legends is a 5v5 game. I'm speaking just about this particular game, for example. They have to work all together in synergy to achieve a common goal. This is what all gaming is about. And yeah, it's just, gaming's been a big part of my life. A lot of the best friends I've ever made in my entire life come from gaming. It's not isolationist. That's the main point I want to get across, is that gaming creates a lot of friendships, a lot of opportunities, and there's a lot of competitive spirit in the games. I think these are very valuable lessons that the kids can learn, just competing and working together. So kind of going on this little tangent, but I love the sport, and I'm really happy that Law and Foran are embracing this. So thank you very much.
I'd like to finally go to one of our student athletes. This student athlete was able to go to states with us to Quinnipiac, and I'd love for her to share her experience because I think she brings such a unique perspective to it.
Hi, I started esports like pretty much last year, and it's brought like a lot of like opportunities for me, especially with like learning how to like speak more like publicly with my friends and just as a person. Like if you told me to come out here like a couple years ago, I would have not been able to just like talk. But being in esports has like got me to communicate with people more. And the majority of my friends now are all from esports because like we all share we all like video games. And playing in esports at school, we've been able to have so many opportunities, but going to like colleges to like play and compete with other schools and even connecting with other schools, which we made friends with the last like competitive team that we went to last time. But yeah, we've just like gone really far with like even only like a little time to like prepare, and like I think we only started like a year ago and we've already gone to states. We've already talked to, we did an interview with like a professional esports player, which is really exciting. And she talked about like all the different stuff that she's able to do in her career and like things that she does at home, and how basically she was able to connect with her community through esports. And yeah, it really helped me be able to just become the person I am today.
Thank you guys very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, back to me. So just speaking of, very cool, Jonathan Law's Mario Kart team, in its first season, as Ms. First said, not only made it to the playoffs, they clutched the win and earned their spot in the state semifinals at Quinnipiac University. They got to play in the state-of-the-art esports facility, ultimately finishing in 4th place in the entire state. So very cool. We have a link to their playoff match in the presentation if you want to take a look at it. It's very cool. We had some commentary from students. I probably personally watched it like 10 times. It's really exciting. And then season 2 so far. So again, this is our 2nd season. It's the same structure as last year. We have the match days, practice days. We're able to offer a new game this year with Play Versus, which is Marvel Rivals. It's a team-based superhero game, so 6 students, like Mr. Lippert mentioned, with League of Legends. It's another game where 6 students have to work together. They all have different roles and tasks, and they're kind of trying to figure out how to simultaneously do this to win the match. So far, Foran's Madden football team is looking very good, and Law's Mario Kart team are doing great as well. They might make it to the playoffs. I heard Coach First say she wants second place this year for Mario Kart, so let's go. And just overall with the esports programs, we're trying to do more than obviously just the games. One way we do this is by having Q&A sessions with people who are already involved in esports at either a collegiate or professional level. Like Izzy said last week, we did a Zoom call with one of the best Tekken players in the world, professional esports player Janelle Cuddlecore Carter. She told us the story of her esports journey, answered lots of questions from students and staff. She signed to Red Bull Gaming. She's a pro. This is her living. She earns money not only through tournament winnings, but through sponsorships, brand deals, advertising appearances, etc. She also does public speaking, so the interview was actually a real treat. Again, we have a link to that on the Milford Public Schools Esports YouTube channel as well. I'd highly recommend watching it. In addition to that, we had, thanks to Affinity, we were able to get several colleagues to join us to tell us all about it. We've also established esports in the curriculum here in the Milford Public Schools. I don't know, Steve, did you want to just speak to this quickly?
Sure. So as we continue to be responsive to the interests and needs of our students, we're always looking at additional ways to add concurrent or dual enrollment courses. And we have been exploring partnerships with Southern Connecticut State University. And one of those courses is an Introduction to Esports course. And while you naturally think it has something to do with the video game aspect of it, it doesn't. It's actually a business course and has the opportunity for students to gain experience with the marketing and also the organizational management side of esports. So we have completed our initial application for instructors to be able to teach that and have started to think about next steps for us in terms of offering that as an opportunity to expand our student athletes the opportunity to connect that work during the school day. And obviously, as Dr. Katai and I have shared with you many, many times, our vision for career pathways into the future. One of the career pathways that I have the dream to be able to create here in Milford is a cybersecurity and IT systems pathway, of which I would love to have the opportunity to have a esports connection to that. Ways for students to get courses in artificial management, thinking about sports broadcasting. And I'd even love to see an esports capstone opportunity come out of that, where there's opportunities for them to connect on athlete management and some of the fiscal management side of esports. So definitely pieces down the road that we'd love to be able to connect this into a career pathway at some point.
Great, thank you. So sort of going along with what Steve talked about, this idea that there's esports competition as well as curriculum opportunities. You may have seen or heard that the proposed esports arenas budget item was approved by the Board of Aldermen last Monday. So this project is going to the Permanent Schools Committee for next steps. I truly believe these arenas will help make Milford an esports hub. More information will be coming as we move forward with this project. And then just pretty much last but not least, I think the logos look pretty cool. So Law's Esports team logo was actually designed by Izzy right over here. And then Foran's logo was created by a friend of Coach Dubuque's, Thomas Reedy. And hey, you can actually buy your own t-shirts, hoodies, customized jerseys if you want. And 20% of each sale goes back to the esports programs at the schools. With that, this is kind of like in the old games where it's like, you have to continue, press start to continue. Are there any questions?
So just to mention before questions, I think for us to look at the links, we can go to the presentation that we got in our email. Should have live links in it, correct?
It was emailed to you today.
Yes, correct. So it should have a live link that you can go and look at these items. So I look forward to that. Questions, board members? Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. Thank you for the great presentation. Thank you, everyone. Great to see such a program come to life in new sport. Just some basic questions. Fall and spring semesters, these are occurring?
Mm-hmm.
And so fall, just September was our first?
I think so, yeah, it started in September.
Okay.
And then it ended in December.
Okay, and so 53 students participated in that in addition to who are?
Combining the two.
Okay,
yeah.
That's great. And then, so there are 4 different games that are being played?
So there's actually more than 4, so I can just run them down really briefly if you like. So on the Nintendo Switch, we've got Smash Bros. Ultimate, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, Splatoon 3. On the PC, we've got Rocket League, League of Legends, Marvel Rivals. On the PS5, we've got Street Fighter 6, Madden Football 25, and NBA 2K 25. Yep.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions from board members? Ms. Pretty?
So are they able to then carry this over and play the same games when they're home? Or is it pretty much just when they're kind of together as a team? Or
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, they are. So, basically we have like the systems and the games and stuff here. Some students like bring in their own stuff too, but they also can practice at home as well. Like I think, Ms. First, the Mario Kart team, right?
I have organizational stuff so that they have the option to participate at home as
Yeah.
well. So it's
Like
like they've got the ability to reach out to one another and start pickup games. I encourage them to schedule things outside of normal meeting time, especially during like longer breaks, because it's essential for them to continuously practice.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And do you have parent feedback in terms of, their engagement in this? I
Yeah.
think it's obviously very productive.
Yeah.
Because they're, it's a potential future for them.
Yeah.
So do you have parent feedback?
Yeah, parent
on it too?
feedback's been really good. I can tell you one that sticks out to me is at Foran, there was a mother that emailed me, and she said, because she's aware of my involvement, she's actually also a teacher in the district, and she said, I just want to thank you, for this program. My son bought a bunch of computer parts, and he started building a gaming computer, and he's really into it, and he wants to program and just kind of going all in with it. Yeah.
Okay, very good. And then one last question. So this is a potential, or do we know that it'll be intro to esports come 25, 26? It will definitely be a course?
So far, we have one instructor who I know has been approved,
Okay.
and we're waiting on the others, so.
Great. And the curriculum for a pathway, these potential courses going forward, would that fall under, I see the computer science and stuff, does that fall under like a STEM track to meet the credit requirements, or?
Yeah, so any of our, our STEM courses would fall under that
Okay.
particular, the technology especially. I would love to have the pathway where it bridges from multiple areas. So there's some business courses, there's computer science, there's the STEM. So
Yeah.
kids get that well-rounded experience that we would see as part of a pathway.
That's great. Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, Ms. Wolf-Whiten?
Just a quick question. Remind me, the arenas, are they going to be at both schools or just one school?
Both schools.
At
yeah.
both schools.
Mhm.
And I just like to say, I just think that this is such an exciting program. As the parent of a 26-year-old who's been playing League of Legends since middle school, I had my doubts for a lot of years. But I also teach at the University of New Haven, and one where they have a really robust e-gaming program, and it has been amazing to me. I teach English, and in my English classes where I have these students who are e-gaming majors who at the beginning of the semester talk about their disdain for reading, when we start talking about literature, all of a sudden they're able to relate the lore that they learned in one of these games to like these contemporary and classic short stories that we might be reading. So, I think that the more that we can talk about the benefits of this, because there's still so many people who really don't understand the benefits and think we're just rotting our children's minds. Nothing could be farther from the truth. They learn so many skills that can be applied to so many different disciplines. So this is just super exciting.
Thank you. Yes, I agree.
Could you just quickly give a little tiny bit of vision of what you think an arena might look like? I know that came up at the Alderman meeting. We're not looking to break ground and add on. It's using existing space.
Yeah, using existing space again. I think we just have a kind of a very rough idea. Now that we actually have the funding, we can look at things like working with an architect to design, kind of like designer, be like, what's the best space to utilize for this?
And it would be like 4 different spaces, just to give you that little brief overview. A gaming area for the tournament play, or like if you're actually playing a match at that time, with a spectating area, kind of, almost think of not quite an auditorium type feel, but something like that, where you're sitting watching with TVs around. And then a gaming area, like a practice area with, almost like a lab type situation. and then like 2 other rooms off to the side. That would be one for production, so the people doing the announcing and watching and streaming and all that piece of it. And then another piece for the coach to, you know, do a little bit of one-on-one work with a student, or like even just an area for a single player to play by themselves.
Other questions? Ms. Mahler?
Just throwing in on top of what everyone else has said, that this is great. This is not a space that I was familiar with. I'm a little bit more familiar on the cyber sports side of the world. This is a little bit of a parallel universe and purposes and all of that. So seeing this and all the full, robust, just everything that comes around it with the, like you said, with the training and the learning and the, you know, moving on up and all the varying levels, and just seeing so many parallels to things that we all know and are familiar with, between the Olympics and the World Cup and collegiate, you know, pathways to this and that, and all of these things make sense. The sponsorships, the, you know, the management, the business of sports, all of these are things that people recognize with words that they're already familiar with, and just simply swapping out those traditional sporting terminology with the esports terminology makes it so much clearer to so many people who wouldn't necessarily have already understood how much is going on here. So thank you for, there's a lot of work that goes into starting anything from scratch, particularly something that has this many different moving pieces, despite the fact no one's actually moving. This many like components that have to go into it and all come together. So a huge thank you to you and to our coaches, and especially to our students who are jumping into it and diving into it all in. Because if no one was interested, it wouldn't matter how much we thought it was cool.
Right.
So I'm glad that all of that is lining up and is poised to continue growing here. But I think it's a very cool new thing for Milford to have in the future. Yeah, so
Mr.
thank
Smith,
you.
did you have any questions, Mr. Smith? Nope.
No.
Okay. I just wanted a clarification. So there's 2 seasons, fall and spring,
Yep.
53 kids. So do kids participate in both seasons, or can they just do one?
They can, yeah, they can do one. So that's what we've had. We've had situations where they were already committed maybe to a spring sport, but they were free in the fall, and vice versa. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much, and good luck.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add something. So in addition to coaching the team in my free time, I'm also playing in a league with my friends of my own. We play in weekly matches on Sundays. We play against 2 collegiate teams. We play against Florida State University and Johns Hopkins University. They have their own League of Legends teams, just as an example. I thought that was
Great, yes. So no other questions? All right, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it, and good luck. It is a great program. Dr. Kutaya,
Ready?
the rest of your, yeah?
Yep, okay, great. Turning things over to Ms. Capazna for our talent manager development report.
Thank you. So this month you have my listing of job postings, personnel recommendations, retirements, resignations, terminations, and stipend appointments. Not much different in this month, pretty standard. I do want to point out that as far as retirements go, we are, of course, higher than typical at this time of year. We're up to 10 teacher retirements and 1 administrator retirement. We typically track teacher retirements, but administrator retirements would kind of fit into this category due to the severance that they get paid out. So I just wanted to report that.
Thank you. On the job postings, just to clarify, a lot of these are summer programs, they're like stipend type things, right? Summer programs?
Yes, we do have a lot of postings. It would appear that we have a lot of openings, but when recently asked at the Board of Finance meeting, I reported that we had 11 vacancies. They asked for a vacancy rate, which was really a rate that I was familiar with, but it's not something we track. So in order to not skew that, I didn't want to include stipends or summer programs, because they're really not vacant. They will be if we don't fill them when the program starts. But, so if you look at it by ways of vacancies that are currently that are running but not being attended to, we have 11 openings.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yep.
So there's 2 openings, say, for next year, the ASL teacher, and what was the other one? The elementary school principal for Mrs. Whitaker. So I didn't include those as a vacancy, even though they're a job posting. So there's kind of a little bit of a difference.
Okay.
And then I also should point out that we do list the nurses, even though they're not our employees. We work with the health department to get those jobs posted on all of our sites, because in some districts they are Board of Education jobs, if you will. So we kind of work with the health department to make sure that we get the word out there that they're looking for someone.
Any questions for Ms. Kapazna?
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
I'm turning things over to Mr. Brennan for the disbursement report.
Thank you, Mr. Lennon, members of the board. In your package, you will find a list of all cash disbursements over the amount of $1,500 for the month of February. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions for Mr. Brennan? Yes, Mr. Fermender?
Yes, the very last item, arbiter funding
I asked that once, but I don't remember the answer, though.
for
Yes.
game.
Game day operations, so that's the money that we put into the accounts for the schools so that they can pay refs and
Okay.
of that nature. They call it arbiter funding, yes.
It sounds so much different than what it really is.
Yes.
Yeah, it's for the game day operation pieces. And that's offset by ticket sales, of course.
There's an expense, where did I see it, for the agri-science school, $67,000, I think it was. That's a one-time expenditure, right? It says for the full year.
I believe so. Which page are you referring to?
I'm trying to find it now.
Trumbull Board
The
of Ed.
Trumbull Board of Ed?
Yeah, yes.
Yes, that's for the 24-25 school.
That's for this school year.
That's for the whole year.
We're paying it quite late.
Yeah, it depends when
When they
they
bill you,
submit the bill for us.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much, Mr. Brennan.
Thank you.
That completes the superintendent's report, Ms. Coleman.
Thank you. So now, board members, we will invite up our facilitators, Dr. Broderick and Reynolds, and we will move into a long-range facilities planning workshop.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening.
To Dr. Kataya's point earlier about the time that school board members put in besides the 2 meetings a month, I assume that the community knows you've also put in 2 full Saturdays, or Saturday mornings anyway, over the last 2 months, so, on this work. So, the first thing we'd like to do is have you reflect on the last community conversation. You've had the opportunity to read over the feedback as well, just hear your perspectives and your experiences facilitating or scribing once again. So what came up for you? What worked, what didn't work, what were surprises, what were aha moments? Not all at once.
I found, what I took out of it was, I don't think we got any different information really than we had gotten from January 11th. I think the comments and the questions and the outcome was relatively similar to what we had seen then. I think that I didn't see any real clear opinion one way or the other on the 2 questions. We did pose 2 specific questions. I did see, rather than, commitments to the answering the questions, similar, just a continuation of the thinking that no status quo, we need to do something. I saw that a couple of times. You have to do something. More opportunities for kids, for programming, clubs, electives, things like that. And then wanting parity among schools or equity, whatever word you want to use for that. Those 3 themes I saw come up repeatedly in the summary sheets that we have that were presented when we came back to the large group. And for me, for the purpose of this process, we're talking about parity of facilities, even though there's that mention of programming and opportunities to be available at schools. And I think there's still, a lot of the questions and comments, as we've tried to explain, are not things that really can be answered at this point in time, that, we'll get into that, the next agenda item, but that much of that will come when we go to the next phase, I guess you'd say.
I think that one of the things, not necessarily just from my room, but from the entire event, one of my takeaways was I think that there is a really huge need for the community to understand, and perhaps for us to better educate them about the fact that this is not something we're doing tomorrow. That we are talking about concepts, and concepts can change the more data that we bring in. And there is a real sense of urgency and some extreme emotion, totally understandable, around what particularly might happen to the middle schools. I was part of the very last freshman class to enter Milford High School. And at one point, when that first year, a group of seniors moved out, there was only then sophomores, juniors, seniors. And then that next class graduated. And then all the juniors went to Foran High School, and then my class was split up between Law and Foran. And it was not easy. It was not easy at all. But we did know going into it what was going to happen. And it helped prepare us. And I think that idea that was heard was this, talked about in the community conversation, that, whatever we do, that let's not just do it thoughtfully and carefully, but with plenty of time. Yeah. Right? So that people do understand what's happening. But that idea of, look, if your child is going into 6th grade next year, this is probably not going to affect them at all. I think that we would have much more productive conversations if we were able to take the emotion out and we were focusing on the idea of this is long-term that we're trying to figure out.
Right. Right. That idea of giving people the time to anticipate the change is so huge in this process.
Yeah.
Lauren?
I would say a little bit to that as well, and speaking not just for my specific room, but for the overall day, and what we heard from other folks is that I am, again, just blown away by, I actually loved the emotion part of it. I love that people are so committed and so passionate in this process, everybody doesn't have the time and the bandwidth and the ability to completely dig in on this. We do because we accidentally signed up for it. But in the community, I'm so appreciative of the people who keep coming out and who keep speaking up and who keep trying to encourage friends and neighbors and others with and without kids in the school, ever or now or later, to come and participate. I think that's it's really highlighted one of the great unique things about Milford is how everybody contributes and everyone feels ownership and engagement with what we're doing, whether or not they can attend every single thing or not. And I think that is always really great to see, and I love that these two conversations have been structured in a way that has allowed that to maximize over different opportunities people have had to contribute and to learn about what's going on. I think in terms of takeaways, one of the things that shifted a little bit for me in thinking was that there seemed to be, regardless of where people come down on the questions of 1 or 2 or 3, there was a connection between that the answer to 1 and 2 depended on the answer to 2 and 3. That you can't just say, I want 1 of these, and I want 2 of those, and I want 6 of this, and I want, a partridge in a pear tree, and then we're just gonna take our favorite things and squish them together, and that's a plan. Because the actual relationship between those answers changes based on what those variables are. that they're not independent, they're not in a vacuum. High schools can't be decided on by themselves, middle schools cannot be decided on by themselves. Those two things have to be linked. So in my mind, everything that we have going forward, and this is a more in-depth conversation for another day, but is looking at the options and the concepts, as we keep saying, of what we might want to continue pursuing at this stage of this very lengthy process, as Cindy was saying, that there has to be attention paid to that connective tissue because it changes the answers along the way. And so predetermining what those answers will be without having taken the time to explore that connective tissue feels premature to me. And that was a different feel and a different sense than I had from before.
Thank you.
Even, tacking on what everybody just said, even though there might not have been a clear answer pointing us to the two questions we asked, I think what clearly came out of all the rooms was a list of concerns that we have to address no matter what configuration we pick. Concerns about class size, even though we set it up front, we're looking for an assurance that, we're still sticking with it. Mental health came up. If we're going to any larger school, showing that we still are going to support the mental health of the students regardless. So I think, timing that already talked. So I think we have to really look at those concerns and make sure that we have a way to address them in whatever we pick. To me, that was pretty strong feedback.
Yeah, they don't want to lose what's working in your schools
Right.
now and the addressing students' issues in making these big changes. Yeah. Others. And I don't want to leave you out, Mike, so you want to go next?
It was just really moving to see how many people came out the last two. I did have to laugh in that the moderator that I was partnered with was a teacher that I didn't have in high school, but I've known for 20 years, and I was assured that it was a random pairing, but it was really great to work with him and work with our group and really hear the discussion about how there are a lot of thoughts, feelings, emotions, but it was really cool to have that dialogue and discussion where folks were able to move through it. And there were a few people who said, I came in one way and now I'm very much open to another alternative. So it was great to be part of that process.
Thanks, Mike. Others? Yeah. Yes, Megan.
It's been great to hear everyone's conversations here. I think what I heard was what everyone said. People are interested in change and that's occurring, but there's a lot of fear associated with that change, and whether it's mental health concerns, size of classrooms, what is the potential that we have. There's the idea that if we do something, it's not going to be better, which I think is on us. The onus is on us to demonstrate that what we are going to do is better. Whether it's building a new school or putting on an addition or whatever it is, it needs to be an idea of better. And we have to address the concerns that Tom just brought up. I think that we are sometimes missing an element of this, which is an incredibly important element, is that our buildings are still 50 to 75 years old. They are not going to improve without massive investment in the buildings. And I can't get away from Mr. Bradbury's comments about how much money are we investing in schools that are never going to get any newer, where Mr. Stein says the envelope is still the envelope of the school. So we have to do something, and it's important to listen to the concerns, because I agree. I think it's great that everyone's commenting and being part of it and telling how their opinions are, because it means people care. That's what that means. It's people coming forward and they care about their community. They love it. They do that. As I've said, I went to Mathewson. I went to Harborside. I graduated from law, and now I'm here. I know the buildings. I know where we are in the community, and I know how important they are. But I think it's on us to make the decisions to move forward, where take the emotional, but then remember we have to make changes so that we can have the programming we want, to have the facilities, to dream big for our students, because I think it's hard to dream big in a room with no windows.
Yeah.
So how do we address those things? or outlets, or no Wi-Fi, or any of those things that are, we just had a presentation about esports. And it's not about the sport, it's about the curriculum, it's the opportunities that exist for children that are linked to this, that I checked my battery was charged, so I knew, because I wasn't gonna find a plug in here that was long enough for my cord to put in. So,
Keep all those thoughts in mind as we move to the next phase.
I think Mr. Smith wants to say something.
Yeah.
Yeah, just real quick, and thank you for that comment. It did remind me, one other thing that I would like to mention this forum. When we started our breakout session, one of the participants goes, what problem are we trying to solve? And to exactly Ms. Boa's point, and Mr. Bradbury's and so many things we've talked about, it's going to cost us hundreds of millions of dollars to keep the status quo, or hundreds of millions of dollars to do something different. And it's a question for the community to decide how we want to invest those dollars.
Right. Thank you.
And then after I said that, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And it's a great dialogue. So I think that exactly that is a point that's important to drive home.
Just one. I agree with a lot that's been said. I love when we do get together at the end of both January and March, and we all come together, and it's all very civil, and it's all very respectful, and even in our small groups, it was, I understand your point. It was very collaborative. People listened, they took another opinion, and they took it in, and they could understand, which was nice. And then at the end, it all came together, and it was, like I said, just civil and respectful. And then sort of we have a good feeling about it when we come out of those. And then, unfortunately, you can't control this, but there's always the scuttlebutt or people who may not have been there, may not have been there. And it's like, again, we have to go, like Ms. Glendon mentioned at the beginning, this isn't happening tomorrow. There will be emotion today, and then in 5 years when things happen. Cindy, you mentioned, so Lenox Avenue closed when I went from fourth grade to fifth grade. I had to go to K Avenue, which is now West Shore. So I experienced a school closing and had to go. And that class in fifth grade was 32 students. So at least we're not there. I have a picture, I used it in the past. And then our kids went through the 2010 K235 reconfiguration. So they had to go from their neighborhood school, Orange Ave, to Calf Penn. We managed, and we also, it is a matter of, community engagement and making sure they're along the process. We have been transparent for 20 months. And again, it's not happening tomorrow, but something will happen. And not everybody's going to be happy. It's the way it is. Change is hard, but change is needed. And it's hard to communicate that when things are bubbling now,
The other thing I just mentioned, because we were in the same small group, there is an assumption that you know more than you're telling people. And for instance, you have land identified. Which is, it's interesting that people don't necessarily believe that some answers haven't been found that you're not necessarily sharing.
And we know what the politicians want, whatever that means, right?
Yeah.
We have a crystal ball.
Aren't we those?
The cities.
Just saying.
And other final comments about it? Overall, general community appreciation for that model.
Yes.
For the opportunity to share those perspectives. We definitely heard minds changed in our group, which is a very interesting process. Okay, so we wanted to just take a moment to look back a little bit and think about what the purpose, and it's come up tonight, but just remind ourselves of the purpose of this long-range facilities planning effort. So you've talked about it already, but let's just capture it. Do you want to write or do you want to? Yeah, and we get to that next. So you talked about your facilities are old, and you've been kind of making this case to your community too. What is the purpose of what you're doing? You've spent so many hours and a lot of money answering questions about the state of your facilities, about the essentially also gauging your community appetite. You've put a lot of time and effort into this. Why? Why are you doing this?
I know why, because I don't want to open my email and see an email that says a pipe burst and the ceiling collapsed on children during the night, and we have to close the school and then figure out how to scramble. That is, I think, the worst nightmare of Dr. Kataya, Mr. Brennan, Mr. Autiri, Mr. Bradbury, because it's happened.
So, big picture, it's ensure.
Right, that kids can go to school tomorrow. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
Stability of
Buildings
the,
are safe.
stability of the infrastructure, the
Yeah.
buildings are safe.
I mean, we had an issue over the summer. We had to cancel or move summer school because the chiller went down at 4. Like, these are legitimate issues. It's like, my hot water heater broke. Guess what I have to do tomorrow? I have to buy a new hot water heater. Like, that's the reality.
And so what else? What you were talking earlier about the importance of being able to charge your Chromebooks and
technology.
So having the
modern
buildings,
having
that support,
facilities that meet your program needs.
buildings that support our programs.
I think it's two parts, technology and programs itself.
But the technology exists for the purpose of the programs. Buildings that support the programs and the ways that we use tools today.
I put programs.
And I think we want to take thoughtful action before we have to take emergency action.
Okay.
I think we also are trying to find efficiencies so that we can offer more programs overall.
I think there's an element here of we're going to spend a lot of money. Are we going to spend it to keep polishing and repainting and repairing, or are we going to spend it, how are we going to spend the money? What's the most efficient use of money that gets us where we want to go?
I want to spend it wisely.
And not spend good money, or good money after bad, right? Band-aids and things that could have been improved upon or new when you're just band-aiding what we already have. It could be the same amount of money.
So making sure that you have facilities that work for your children, right? That provide, optimize their educational experience. Thank you. Any last comments about purpose? Okay, so we had talked about having something in place by May 1st, which is all of 6 weeks away. What is your hope for the outcomes of this work by May, right now, today?
What do we hope to have? So I hope to have some kind of an agreement on, we've agreed that this is a lengthy process. We're going to have to go out to an RFP to get more input and data from experts. So I would hope to have agreement on either a plan or two, that we can.
By the beginning of May.
Yeah, the decision on, what it is that we want to put out to RFP, I guess, would be the.
Like what question are we specifically asking them to go and
Question
pursue?
or questions, yeah.
Yeah. Questions.
So what you need to explore further?
So what you're saying is 1 or 2 concepts?
Yeah, concepts, yeah.
Right.
I guess that would be, decision on concepts might be more, because then your RFP then determines the questions. So it would be the concepts, right? That's a better word, I think.
Okay, so that you can explore more and answer some of the questions that are being generated. Okay. Anything else? Okay.
I think also a timeline of phases, maybe, of what we might do at all 3 levels, because it's not all gonna happen at once, probably not, I would imagine. But a phase of things at the 3 levels, and what that might look like, because if you're gonna spend a lot of money, you probably wanna spread it over, you know, over the plan, so.
So would that come out of the information from our
Concepts?
Well, I think
The RFP will tell us what the timeline is. Because
whoever we have do whoever we hire.
Okay. Yeah,
I think,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
we have to do an RFP and then make a decision on a consultant.
Mhm.
And I
So-
think at that point, that person would help us to determine a timeline, I
So I
think.
think you're saying then, getting to this point might not be possible by the beginning of May. You may need to get the consultants to help with that part, and then determine the timeline for phases?
That's what I think. I mean, I don't,
Yeah.
in 6 weeks' time, we can, I think maybe we'll come to the first line there, I think is what we'll get to by May 1st. And then we have to develop an RFP. So the RFP identifies the scope of what it is that we want to have done. So
Yeah.
that's then, I mean, we might be able to determine at that point how long that might take, that piece of it. But I think, you know, it's a piece at a time.
the results that come back from the RFP may encourage us to revisit what our concept was based on what they said.
Well, we have to choose a
But whatever.
person first, so.
But the point being,
Yes.
whatever, yes, what we put out to the
Absolutely.
RFP goes and gets the rest of the information that says, okay, you've asked for this, us to review this structure and/or this concept, these 2 concepts, or this concept, whatever. And then that information comes back and we say, okay, we like what you said, then you move ahead, or you want to revisit based on those answers.
Okay, anything else?
Well, what about like having both for us and the public to know what is going to be the next step, right? So we send, again, you know what, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding.
Yeah, next step.
Misinformation, but, all right, so we're sending out this concept for RFP, or RFPs, right? So once we have those in our hands, what happens next?
So you're saying, make sure that it's communicated to your community that you're doing this.
We're doing this now because
And-
people, yeah, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
So let's make it very clear what the next step in this larger process is. Perhaps in the scope of our beautiful little graphic with the arrow. You know, that shows
Exactly.
this is what we're doing now, this is where we're gonna be next.
I don't know if this falls into outcomes by May, but I think it would be helpful to us to have a better vision of what a real, like, middle school level is or high school in terms of opportunities that we don't really understand. I don't know what a 21st high school looks like or what a 21st middle school looks like in terms of a building of what, like, how does that fit with our curriculum? Like, we heard tonight about esports, we'll come back to that again.
Yeah.
I don't know, if we started this conversation 7 months ago, we might not have
That
had
would
an
be on your
esport.
mind at all.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So you're saying, well, that's part of your study, right? Really understanding what your options are in terms of.
right, no,
the-
that's not, it's not an
different.
outcome for me. It's not outcome, it's not outcomes of what
So are
schools,
you saying
it's like.
between now and May to have some more information on that as?
Yeah.
I mean, we still have a few meetings that
Yeah.
we're gonna have, so.
Like, we've had discussions about team models in middle school. I mean, the understanding of what happens in a middle school, I think is a little, and like programming wise, is not quite clear to me all the time.
Well, I think in terms of the, going back to the purpose, you know, the buildings that support our programs, I think that's, I do think that that's a little bit missing in some of the comments I'm seeing or hearing from members of the public, that they're not really grasping how, you know, what that piece of this is. And they're thinking it's just about, not really sure what they're thinking about. But I know, you know, I saw a comment on Facebook, social media from an individual that I recognize the name as a family that my kids went to preschool with. So the individual's got to be in his 30s, I would imagine, and that you know, understanding in his mind that it was important for the board to do what will give our kids the desired amount of opportunities. I made a note of it in the most efficient way possible. So that really encapsulated for me exactly what it is we're trying to do. But he also mentioned that he likes seeing that we have more programs now, and that he talked about, you know, his opinions about going to 2 schools with efficiencies and maybe even having a bigger pool of people to make friends with and things like that. But I think what that programming piece really means, I think, is kind of missing, because that's, and
So is it, you want to see models of schools that would meet your students' program needs?
well, I wonder if, you know, maybe a, you know, presentation from administration to help us visualize, you know, what kinds of programming might there be in a modern middle school that are, and whether or not our buildings do or don't support that kind of programming, you know.
So visualize facilities that meet your programming needs, right?
I guess that's
If I remember correctly on the chart with the arrow, stick with me here for a second. There were multiple phases. We're in a conceptual phase right now, and then we move to the evaluation and the site selection phase, which is a big old thing. And then after that becomes a evaluation of the programming needs and the educational component of what's going to go on in that building, so that when you design the actual building itself, it meets those needs.
Right.
So I think at this moment, when we're talking concepts, we don't necessarily have to specifically align them to very detailed programming. But when we did the Bureau Veritas report and the work before, there was a very baseline set of programming structures that we wanted to have required in each building. We know there has to be a cafeteria. We know we want to have an auditorium. We know we want to have a gymnasium. We know we want to have a library and a media center. Those are very basic structural programmatic components, as opposed to, and perhaps we put the esports piece in that structural program component list, and then make sure that whatever we're evaluating for checks those boxes, but we don't necessarily need to go into very detailed levels of programming conversations like we have the rest of the year, because it's not necessarily structurally related. To Megan's point of wanting to see what exists and what it could look like, I think that's the perfect way to thread that needle of, can we see an example of a school that has an auditorium and a cafeteria and a gymnasium and a media center and what's a modern library look like? Is there an esports arena that's already built into a building, and what does that whole thing look like at the end of the day? Or
But it
close
is
to
the
it.
ed specs part where you really get to the detail of that.
Exactly, and that's later.
That's
The ed
Yeah.
specs part is later, but the structural piece of, we know we have to have a library, we know we
Right.
have to have a gymnasium, like that part of it, sure, now, but
And-
we've done that.
And remember, when you were also defining the ideal, you want to make sure those components are in there as well, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think we need specifics per se, but for me, I think the pieces that's missing amongst the conversation is the notion that, you know, as we are exploring these opportunities that we want for our kids, people not really getting that if we have to duplicate that over 3 buildings for a middle school or over 2 buildings for a high school, that can be prohibitive. And do our schools, and what challenges might we have immediately that we can identify, I guess, that would perhaps get in the way of that. But I think, because that's how I've been approaching this, is that we want to be able to have more opportunities for our kids in an efficient manner. And so the question remains, you know, what types of things might happen in a modern middle, not what we want to see, not specifics, but what might we want to see in a modern middle school, and how, you know, what does that mean for 2 buildings, 3 buildings, 1 building, 2 buildings? I mean, I don't know if that will help us make our decisions in terms of conceptually what it is that we want. I think that's where I see that there might be some disconnect in terms of being able to move forward with some decisions.
Something I saw in the room that I was in our breakout rooms, was a lot of people were more curious about the data that could help drive these decisions. And to Lauren's point of not getting too specific on the micros, but being able to compare it to another school of, if we were doing the 2 middle schools and the 600 and 600, having a better idea of what the layout would look like, or if we could compare that to other middle schools that have similar enrollment and, the opportunities versus 3 with 400, just being able to compare it to something that already exists and see what the opportunities are like. Because like Lauren had mentioned before, I was really moved by all the emotional feedback that we received during the community meetings. And I think that the data will help move the conversation in different directions where, it might support the emotional side, it might say, fiscally this might be better. But if we're able to collect some of that data before May and then add that to the communication, rather than just communicating the next steps, but also saying, there's data here that's supporting X, Y, Z behind our decision, because, again, I'm a huge advocate for the emotional side of it, but, if we end up making a decision that we want to move forward in and the emotional comes out, if we have data that could also back that up, it might change the conversation a bit.
So when we get to the next steps, you can talk about the data that you specifically, that you would like, you think that would help you in making those final decisions. All right, do you want to take it from
And Mike, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, let alone the folks behind you, but first of all, let me congratulate and thank all of you, 10 of you that are on the board, for service and for giving time and energy and stresses. You deserve a lot of credit. As a facilitator, and I Googled it, it's our job to help 10 of you with the assistance of the administration make decisions and plan projects. We're supposed to make it easy. Good luck to us and good luck to you making these decisions easy, right? You've already had some blood, sweat, and tears about number of elementary, and I believe decided to go from 8 to 6. You've had blood, sweat, and tears about 2 or 3 middle schools. And I thought tonight maybe we could talk a little bit about 2 or 1 high schools. I put together just some of the data that I think are the questions that you probably need to come up with answers for. And I don't have answers, but I'm trying to look at how are you going to decide between 1 high school and 2 high schools. The issue that I heard over and over again raised at the community conversation was where's the land, and 2, how much is the cost? So the first question is locate the land, and we've got some ideas on that. Show economic feasibility or advantage. And I hear that coming tonight. What's the economics of build as new or build new, and or repair, expand, renovate, and grow? So economic feasibility. Third, show advantages for students. Which one school or 2 schools at the high school level provides the biggest advantages for kids? That's supposed to be what we're all here for. Show what's best for Milford Public School System. And again, I'm looking at the high school level, but what's best for the whole thing at that 2 high schools or 1 high school. 5, show what's best for the status, the reputation of the city of Milford. I heard some of that in some of the groups. People who move to town, why? What is the perception of Milford Public Schools? What's the perception of the city given Milford school system? And obviously, it's very high academically. It really is high for the image of the school system. Show its best for the greatest number of students. What decision is going to be best for 5,300 kids? Possibly going up, possibly going down, but we can see the trend line. We have to, no matter what we do with the state have 8-year-old or projections of where it's going, solid, scientifically strong projections of where it's going. 7, show it's most responsive to the request of the city to reduce the operating expenses by reducing the total number of schools. That seems to be, I think Sue mentioned it before, another night, was the main thing that started this conversation of some pressure from town. So I don't have answers to these, but these seem to be at least questions that you would want on a table in front of you, the data, to say this is the way I'm going to vote, or this is what I think we should do. If the idea is for you to have a conversation about it, maybe these provide fodder for that conversation. Maybe these provide the data, the answers would provide the data, I think, for you to make that call as a group. 10 votes as to which way do you think the town should go with 1 high school or 2 high schools. That's a tough call. You're going to have a hard time making that decision. But after the years, the time, the hours, the money that you've spent on it, you may just have to make the decision as to what your best recommendation or request is. You can go with 2 requests. But I think it's the role of a Board of Ed, eventually, whenever, to make that decision, to ask, request, generate your answers to these. Are these the questions you want to wrestle with? Are these the questions you want to have data on? Are there other issues that you say, I really need to know X? And then I could say, okay, I'll vote on 1 or 2 schools.
So are you suggesting that these are questions that we would be seeking from a consultant within the RFP piece, or?
I think you gotta, I think you may have the data.
Well, I'm going to push back on the first one, because we brought in an expert architect who said that you first have to have your concept, and then you go out to RFP and you have somebody seek land for you. So I would respectfully say that locating land should not be something that we're talking about right now, because
That may be up to the town to help you locate the land.
Correct, at a later, once we have our concepts that we're
Well,
going.
if you decided, I mean, this is if you wanted to ever make the decision to build 1 new high school. It isn't even worth the argument if there's no land. And whatever land you have now, seems to me that it's only going to be less over the next 20 years. So someplace along the line, you can get rid of the whole issue if the answer is there's no land.
Well, I think we've kind of determined that there is land around, but whether it's feasible land and whether it's land that is suitable for building, that's something that has to be looked into by specialists. So I think we have to, for me, I'm going on the assumption that yes, there is land in Milford somewhere. But I don't know about other people. Whether it's suitable land, I don't, when Mr. Mr. Stein brought that up, all the things that you have to look at, I had never even considered that. It was like, for me, it was just find 35 acres. So it's not, you can't just go find 35 acres. You have to find 35 acres or whatever that is buildable and suitable for a school. So that's where, in his opinion, the experts come in as the first thing that they would look at. It seemed to me.
The way Jack had framed it to me earlier is if these were all yeses, if these were all, you got the land, could you then support 100? Right? Isn't that accurate?
I think so, unless anyone has some others.
Well, that makes more sense to me.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted to
to me,
clarify
yeah.
that, because that's really, I think, how that was intended to be framed.
And I think you're right. I think there's land. The question is, can you get at it? Can you have it? Can you use it? And do any of you want to add to the list? But wait a minute, I couldn't decide 1 or 2 unless I knew X other things. This was my thought of everything I could think of as to what data you need in front of you to say, I think the answer is 1 or I think the answer is 2. In any event.
Well,
You mentioned,
what else would you need to know in order to decide that question? Because that is the big question that needs to be answered, to Lauren's point, since everything is interrelated.
And do we
already
have
did-
agreement on that it's interrelated? I mean, because I'm still not totally sold on the interrelated piece.
I can make a case for interrelated.
Mhm.
The experience of our students moving through either groups across 2 or 3 middle schools and then moving into 1 or 2 high schools changes. Their experience is vastly different if they start with a group of students at 2 middle schools and they are with them in 6th grade and they're with that same group from 6 to 12. And it never changes and it never expands and you are locked into that world for those 7 years. That is a vastly different student experience than if you are in 3 different middle schools and then you combine into 2 high schools. You get that variation in your experience, and to me that is an incredibly important component. I think locking a kid in 6th grade into the exact same channel for the next 7 years is not really the point of the school. So to me, that's a component where they're related. The 1 high school gives you more flexibility on how many middle schools you want to have. The 2 high schools, when you look at, if you move to 1 high school, what do you do with the 2 high school buildings? Do those become the 2 middle schools? There's a connection there that, makes an argument for 2 over 3. If you have the 1, if you have the 2, I think you still have different arguments for keeping the 3. I think it's, to me, they're very connected.
The things you said initially, though, for me, they're more philosophical, and it's opinion-based.
Aren't we talking about conceptual stuff right
We
now?
are, but-
philosophically anyway?
Right, but I think there are, we have districts, plenty of districts across the state and country that do exactly that, have middle schools that follow, where the kids follow the same track.
Right. And I guess the question is, do we want to be one of those, or do we have a
So-
Milford-specific
right.
answer that is more important to who we are as a community, rather than, well, it's fine because someone else does it too? To me, that part matters.
I think that I can't resist adding a bit to that conversation. I tried to speak last time about what comes first. I think you could waste ages arguing about what doesn't have to be decided for 7 or 10 or 15 years. If you don't decide what comes first, why fight about what's going to happen 10 years from now? If you know what's going to come first, some things will have chain effects and ripple, and other things won't. If you build 3 elementary schools tomorrow morning, it's not going to affect the high school for a long time. If you build a high school, theoretically, there's a ripple. So that's why I just tried to get as many thoughts as I could and welcome you adding and figuring out what do we propose to do within the next 3 months or 3 years. I don't know how long it's going to take to make that decision, but I think that decision is very core. It's very beginning. It could be very beginning. And I don't think you should be afraid to make it. I think you got to come up with the data, have the data in front of you, and make the decision. And I know that's speaking, and I'm supposed to make it easy. It ain't going to be easy, but it's not impossible either.
See, in terms of the best way to achieve whatever concept we have and what our thinking is, for me, the best way to achieve that is for the next phase of the consultant to come up with, this is what I would recommend you do to get to where you want to be. That's how I've been
But
approaching
don't you
this.
need concepts first?
Yeah, you need concepts first.
So this is
where you
helping
wanna
you
be
get to
part.
the concept. I saw Megan first and then.
Sure. I mean, I know the answer for what I want for 1 high school. I don't need any more additional information as a concept, because I think that more than one thing can occur at the same time. So even if we make a decision that we're gonna have 1 high school, that doesn't preclude us from working on the elementary school piece at exactly the same time, because what has been clear is that planning of a high school, locating a spot, putting it there, will take, even if we literally started tomorrow and we made the decision today and we found land and it was a miracle, that school's not opening for like 6 years from today. So in 6 years, we can get a lot of other things done while we still plan for this. It said 3 years to build a school, for a high school. Doesn't take 3 years to build an elementary school. So there are multiple opportunities for us to do many things at one time, which I think, if we come back to Jack's point and everyone else's point, is like, if we decided to pick one high school and we get to the consultant and we say, one high school, where's the land, where is it this? Guess what? If there is in 5 months we get that answer and there's no land, why are we wasting time on this conversation anymore? Then we have to go to 2 high schools, and how do we come back to making the 2 high schools the best that we can make them to go from there? So it's not a if and or what or pause. It's a, we have to do this, we have to do this. Let's make sure we do each track at the same time, because it'll affect each other at the end. So.
I think the only danger with that is, oh, I'm sorry, I jumped right
Oh,
in.
no, go ahead.
I think the only danger with that is if we settle on a concept, I'm so sorry. If we settle on the concept before we have enough data, and then that concept works out, we're like already in motion, and we can't really double back. And not that all this data is what we need. I know we're not going to find the land until we get to step 2, but the thing that worries me is if we just pick a concept because we all feel a certain way, and then it all works out. What about that other concept that we just left behind because we all felt a certain way instead of having that data to back it up?
Does that speak to then exploring the two, to Megan's point about being in parallel? We in parallel have someone exploring the elementary school question and the site location and the evaluation for 6 and what that would be and where that would go. That's an RFP. Then there's an RFP in the meantime that runs for the 1 high school. Where would it go? What would it do? Is it suitable? Is it possible? All of that. Potentially in parallel, what would it take to make these 2 high schools world-class and what they should be, so that we end up with that data around the same time to be able to actually.
So this is
Regardless,
exactly my
effort,
question.
lanes
This
of
is
effort.
exactly my
And it
question.
can be the same thing for middle schools too, of if the high schools are gonna turn into middle schools, what would that take? What would that look like? If all 3 were gonna be world-class, what would that look like? Those are parallel elements that can all happen at the same time in the RFP.
So, yeah, so I would like clarification of the RFP process. So when that happens, is it because we have decided that we want 1 high school, or because we've decided we want 1 high school, 2 middle schools, and 6 elementary schools? Right? What does the RFP contain the entire district concept, or is it just for 1 school?
The options.
It's the entire concept, correct?
Can it be multiple concepts?
I don't see why not.
So in theory, we could have 2 RFPs, one for 1, 2,
No, it's
6.
1 RFP, but it's given.
Well, a 2
because it's one
component,
firm,
right?
we'd be
And 1
working on the
for
whole
2,
picture.
3, 6.
Yes.
So we've discussed this. So the larger the RFP, the more time and the more money. And please know that we did not budget for this. So in May, you'll have to direct us to what to remove in order to afford this. So remember, if you're asking for all of that, it's going to take longer and more money.
Mike, did you have something you want to say? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand.
Stretching. No, stretching.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you can make the scope of the RFP whatever you want.
Correct. So we determine the scope of
So
the
would
RFP.
To that question there, just to clarify, is it better to have a single RFP that contains 2 parallel concepts, like to Cindy's point of the 2, 3, 6 versus the 1,
Slide
2,
14.
6 within the same RFP, or does it make sense for that to be 2 separate RFPs?
1
Make it a little
RFP.
bit bigger.
With 2 heads, okay.
Yeah, because it would just be the scope of the work that they're researching those different tracks.
Yeah,
'Cause I
so
wouldn't-
2
yeah.
tracks within the same
I
RFP.
wouldn't think you'd want different people
Thank you.
looking at
No,
different
for
things,
sure,
right?
yeah.
Just putting up that process.
That arrow is still.
So we want the arrow thicker, please.
Okay.
You can take a marker.
Okay.
It's representational of a process that actually continues.
So,
I mean, I think, to me, a lot of what we're saying speaks to being able to get at the answers to those questions eventually. And in my mind, only speaking for myself, I want to be able to answer those questions to explain what we decide. I don't think I can answer those questions until I have information from an RFP that explores those 2 tracks and we can compare the results of both of those
more completely to be able to say, what are the advantages? Because right now, to your point, it's all theoretical. It's all emotional or ideological because we don't have, to Adam's point, the data really, and when we say data, we mean cost, sites, locations, like all the things that would come from the RFP process, from those two tracks to be able to compare those two concepts at that level. And that's the type of detail and data and depth that has been coming out in the community conversations repeatedly and has come out from us. Every time someone says, what more data do you need? We all say the same thing. And we've been saying the same thing for months and months, but we won't have that depth of information and data and cost analysis to compare until we actually go to the experts, to Sue's point, in the RFP process. So in my mind, just doing the RFP process for one specific concept is premature at this stage because there are potentially two concepts that we would want to compare along the way. Even though I know that's a cost and that's a length and that's in all of those things, but from a comfort level of signing up and saying, this is it, this is the future structure, this is what the school should look like, I don't feel like I have that information, and I think it's become clear to me in this conversation and others that that information won't exist until we have that RFP process.
Yeah, in terms of like the economic piece, especially the financial piece, I mean, we have ballparks, right? We've been given X square footage times $1,000 per square foot, so we have ballparks, but when you put all the pieces together, it's
the reality
is
of what that
that
looks like.
you need an expert who can define that more succinctly and make perhaps recommendations based on their expertise.
And specific to our sites and our locations and our Milford details that are not theoretical on paper, but that are actually out looking at the buildings and what they need.
I wouldn't even want to suggest that you go with an RFP to look at one high school unless you're really ready to move in that direction if these are all answered. And I realize that you feel like it's a chicken and egg thing with which one you go with, but do you, I guess I'm wondering whether conceptually you can live with one high school at this point. And then your default is go to the two high school model if this doesn't work out.
The way I say it is we have two aging high schools that will need significant amount of work in the next 10 to 15, 20 years. So either we're gonna have one high school or we're gonna have two high schools. We're gonna spend a lot of money in one of two ways. One new high school, significant renovations, or two new high schools. But okay, we can have the same conversation in 3 more weeks about the same exact point where we keep rolling around of where we're gonna come to is like, we don't know where we can build it. I mean, I don't know, I've lived in Milford, you lived in Milford, all of us have lived in Milford for a very long time, and I can name like 5 places where maybe this can go on a miracle. So we need to answer the question. So I think what I heard from your question is like, if it works out that there's one high school, can we live with that decision? I can live with that decision. I will put that out there. I can live with the decision that there's one high school. That's for everyone else to answer.
That's right.
But we can't even move to that point if we don't even know it exists.
Right. But you won't know whether it will exist unless you do that.
Yes.
And I'm not sure it requires an RFP and another expert coming in. I guess I have this feeling that you're going to have, I mean, after Veritas and our work with you, I think you're going to have most of the data, and we can put it on a spreadsheet and have it right there, the age of those buildings, the number of renovations, the capacity of the building, the enrollment in that building, and come up with a decision.
Can you locate the land for us, Joey?
We have,
Mary and I-
seriously.
Mary and I visited-
already looked at that
Cindy,
data.
Mary and I visited
so
two
can I
sites
jump in?
tonight before we came.
All right, well, it's unfortunate that number one is locate the land, because we're stuck there, right? And we can't get to maybe some of the other ones that require less of a concrete answer from the city, yes or no. So while that potentially could be a huge hinge point, we're not getting further down the list. And I think your list is intended for the board to say,
This is what we believe we need in our dialogue to decide whether it's 1 or 2 high schools. So I wish locate the land wasn't even on there, because that's where we're stuck.
Right, because we determined
Right?
that
You can
2
answer
weeks ago,
3.
that-
This board can dialogue about number 3. You can dialogue about number 4. You can dialogue about number 5. You can dialogue about number 6. Like, there are so many other factors that we should be talking about related to students that we are not getting to because we're stuck with number 1. So let's stop talking, if that's okay, facilitators, about the land for a minute, whether you visit it or not. Like, can we get to the other part about what are the advantages of 1 or 2 high schools?
Sure, I can go.
Yeah.
All right, go.
In terms of 1 high school, we have parity for every single child across the district. We will have air conditioning, which is an important factor as we come into this. We have climate control. We have the opportunity to dream big and fit our curriculum to what programs we want. We have opportunities to build arts and humanities classes and offer programming in that space. We have offer efficiencies where we will be able to offer more programming and expand the classroom opportunities for students and offer mental health services by not having 2 sites to have to run and to find those positions always. I think that there will be more opportunities for kids in terms of sports because there is questions regarding the ability of the teams to support it, but we are not currently, correct me if I'm wrong, running a freshman, JV, and a varsity team for every single sport at Law and Foran, so we could have teams, there's space for all the kids to compete, but there's also opportunities for kids at what are currently full law can operate at Foran in terms of swimming and other new teams that are going to live forward. I mean, this is the great thing about having esports again, is we keep coming back to it. 53 students joined a new sport on September 1st. They learned on September 1st and 53 students got involved. That doesn't happen. They didn't need anything new. They just were able to do that.
I'm sure I missed something that you said here. Parity for all, air conditioning and climate control, more programming options, mental health services more robust or more centralized, I guess.
I think we also demonstrate that we are investing in our community.
I think another important piece is that we're going to spend the money one way or the other. So whether we're updating or renovating our current 2 high schools versus building a new one, the money needs to be spent. Or the money needs to be, it needs to be done one way or the other.
And it will be well spent, right, because it's an investment in the future.
We'll have new
rather than
building versus
right,
old.
just trying to keep up what we have. Yeah.
Can we put down it affects all your kids?
Yeah, impacts all kids. And it's not just the sports options that are broader, it's all extracurriculars.
Yeah. I think we heard the conversation that Foran has X amount of activities and Law doesn't have them, and it's just maybe the person happens to be at Foran and they're not at Law. And so kids are exposed to different ones, and I think there's still the opportunity to really address the mental health concerns.
So sports and other options,
that
not just
are
sports.
being worrisome.
And it goes into that idea that, with impacting, that everybody matters, that there's not one side of town that's cared about more than the other side.
Mm-hmm. I have 3 sound bites that are sticking out to me over the last months of this. Dr. Reynolds, you said it from one of the focus groups. Every child will benefit in the city of Milford.
Yep, impacts all students.
Yes. Another one is in the first group in January, someone mentioned growing up here, played sports, had a lot of friends, K through 8, whatever it may have been, and then suddenly you're rivals, right? You played well together. You were a great team in 8th grade, and now suddenly it's just like, and then from that conversation in my head, it's also like one high school makes one community. You're not talking about East and West. You're talking about one Milford community coming out with a diploma from Milford. Those are my 3 things that over all the months we've been doing this are
And
sticky.
in our group that morning, there was one woman talking about hating the rivalry.
Yeah.
Hating the
Oh,
rivalry.
yeah.
So
There was some in each group.
It was tempting to ask those kids tonight, have a student group to say, how do you feel about each other?
My-
You're
my
best
group
friends, and then
loved
all of a
the
sudden,
rivalry.
yeah.
They loved it. Yeah, they were huge advocates for the rivalry. So it's interesting.
I remember when my own kids surprised me and said, we should have one high school. I mean, this was a long time ago, but.
And I think a strange advantage of one high school that you might not think of, speaking from manufacturing experience, if you have an enrollment decline, you can handle that more efficiently in the future in one building than having two underutilized facilities. You can cut back services instead of having.
That applies to middle and high school.
Yeah.
Right, middle and
Yeah,
high school
exactly.
together,
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
What you can offer kids.
Yep.
Right, because you
You're
have
not,
more
you don't have an
efficiency.
underutilized, you don't have two underutilized buildings you're paying an additional cost on.
And I have a fourth thing. Thank you, Cindy, for bringing Pat Bradbury up to the table, because he has his own thoughts, he knows. And he said it without saying it. You know, Jonathan Law has issues. And at the end of the conversation, someone had brought up, you know, we need to do something before we're in an emergency situation, right? And, you know, so I think Mr. Bradbury has a good weigh-in on, you know, some of this, what's happening.
Definitely.
I don't know if it's on there, it's kind of part of the air conditioning climate, it's just brighter, more open, like, nice spaces.
Modern?
Yeah, modern, wanting to building spaces.
Megan, Mary and I were in Farmington last week, and we talked to a kid, and that's almost word for word what he said. This new building has light.
Yeah.
And we looked at the old building, and it looked like the traditional small buildings.
I mean, I work in an office that I'm in a 4-person room with no windows, and by the end of the day, I'm not happy. And then versus when I work at home and I have all my windows and I'm home.
Yeah.
So it affects the ability, and, you know, I've nodded off in more than a few classes with the windows. So there's, and then technology, have we put specifically addressing technological needs?
Well, it's program and.
do that on
And should that be over on the other
places.
list too, that you want to know what technology you get with two schools and what technology you get with one school?
Well, a new building, a more modern building can accommodate more modern technology. Right.
So it's really, but broader than that, to the point, the technology supports the program, right? So it's.
But I mean, like the basics, like does the Wi-Fi work?
But
Do
the
we have enough
idea is that
plugs?
if we stayed with 2 schools, we wouldn't leave them off.
Right. Right.
They would also, you have to assume, like, the technology is gonna be as up to par as it can be. across
Within the
board, but-
element, within the envelopes.
Within the envelope that we have.
State-of-the-art
yes,
technology, we can
yes.
say?
Yeah.
I mean, in theory, even if we had 2 schools, at least the physical aspects of this would be the same.
Right.
Right?
If we
Mary?
built 2 new schools, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Would safety increase with one school, being to only secure one building rather than 2? That's a genuine question.
I don't think it would be safer because we have the same technology in each school, so I don't think, it's just fewer.
Less square footage to worry about for security.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
I'm thinking as
More
a police
efficient.
chief, I'd rather worry about, you know, fewer buildings.
I think that goes with the
But-
economy of scale and the
I don't think
efficiency.
students are less safe in 2
Right.
than they are in 1.
Right.
Yes.
I think that's a
Right.
key point to
The
be made.
resources devoted.
Everybody will be safe. It is a resource question. Just like all the rest of this, it becomes a resource question, not a safety question. Very distinct.
Adam, I'm not sure if that comes under ed specs or not, but it certainly comes under specifications in 2025. It didn't in 1950 or 1970. Safety. We worried about curriculum as opposed to, yeah, the kids are going to be safe, they get on the bus and go home. As you're designing a school, some parts are for educators to design. Some parts are for architects to design. And I have a little bit of a problem with architects designing because we need to speculate on what education is going to be like in 2035. And we need to do that. I mean, it's a guess, it's an estimate, and there's no one guru or 10 gurus that are going to tell you that. So we can speculate, and that's the dream that we talked about from the beginning. You know, what's your best dream? It's got to be a safe building. And that's why you wound up making it in a non-windowed building because of machine guns or something. And I did too when I went to Amherst. And I held it against the superintendent, who I loved dearly with all my heart. But I wound up in the windowless, and it was big. It was a media center, but there was no windows. So at one point it was safety, and now another point you say, wait a minute, you better have a parameter that's wider than that.
Right. I think that there's one piece to me that's missing off of that one high school thing, and it has to do with the student body composition. We're talking about programs, we're talking about structures, but I think there's, on the list that we just made of benefits for one high school, the other paper.
Oh, the other, this one.
That one.
Yep.
We've talked about this before in the mental health conversation, and this came up some in the community conversation, and people come at it from two different sides, where you have people who say, we are very much more likely to lose someone through the cracks in a big group. But we know from a programming and a ratio perspective and a resourcing perspective that those mental health resources are something that we've committed to provide at the same levels that they are currently being provided. So there may be more cracks, but there will be more coverage of those cracks. They will be covered just the same as they are covered now. So that to me is less of a thing. But what I see as a significant benefit of having a larger student body is that individual students are more likely to find their home. They are more likely to find their people. They are more likely to find their peer groups when they have a larger population from which to search.
Yeah, that's exactly what this individual said.
Yeah, I think that's a very significant piece that you don't necessarily think of unless you're really thinking of what it's like to be that student who does not, and this speaks a little bit to my concern of locking kids in with the same peer group from 6th through 12 with no variation, is that if you are challenged in finding that place where you fit, and finding your shape and other people who are your shape that are going to be your people, you have no recourse until you graduate. Nothing's going to change for you, ever. There's no chlorine in that pool. You are done. But I think that you can always change, obviously, all of the things. You know, sure. None of us are graduated from high school, what we looked like in 6th grade, thank the Lord. However, I think that when you have a larger student body, you increase the opportunity for people to find their people because they have more people from which to search. And I think that cannot be underestimated.
So that really gets at the advantages for students and advantage for
Right.
students. Do we want to talk about any of these others at what's best for the reputation of the city of Milford?
Can I add to what Lauren just said?
Yeah.
I think it's also beneficial from an educator perspective, is they have more collaboration between the classrooms and the different teachers that are there. But that comes to good for the city and reputation of city of Milford. I mean, we have discussed over and over again how difficult it is to find new teachers and where we're going to find teachers in the future. And I think if we can provide collaborative environments for teachers and being responsive to their needs, it would retention. It helps to retain people and want to work in new buildings, in new places, or forward thinking. It helps in that way. And, you know, we might be able to find teachers who have specialty. I appreciated that our instructor tonight was the Latin teacher. I took Latin in high school. It has come in handy.
So this really helps with advantages for students, advantages for staff. How about for the city? Do you want to do?
I don't think you can argue that one new high school would have a huge impact. I mean, I don't think anybody could argue that one brand new spanking lovely new high school would only have a good positive image on the city. That's not.
Agreed. I think Milford's constantly fighting against Fairfield County on the line that we are in.
I'm sorry.
I just said that we're fighting against Fairfield County, and what is clear if you look through follow Fairfield County until you make it to a certain point, they have one large high school which provides a lot of opportunities to students that are different from what we are able to offer currently. And so
we offer an alternative to living in Fairfield County. I know that there are likely some members of our community that are not interested in that idea, but I think we have to think of our other responsibility as elected members of a Board of Education is to the community and to have a successful community to support the education.
Do you have anybody down this end that wants to chime in? Scott, you have any ideas on this?
I have ideas, but I am holding my tongue at this point.
Okey doke.
And, we talk about parents being attracted to come to Milford, right, because of our education. This would certainly show Milford's commitment to educational excellence.
I heard that in the community conversation.
It gets back a little bit to some of what we've talked about a couple of times now during budget season, where the vision for the future of our school district really drives the future of the city, because the future of the city, the economic growth, the development, the businesses that want to come here because their people want to live here and they're willing to make the commitment to this town, very much is shown to reside and rest upon the foundation of what that public education system looks like. And this shows not only would that be more quality and therefore allow increased economic development and business opportunities, employment, jobs, all of that, that builds off of a place where people and businesses want to be, but it also shows that the city is committed to that in the long term. And having an opportunity for the city to commit to its public school system in the long term would be real nice after the last couple of years where that has been a question. Businesses go where people want to live.
Adam, do you have anything to add at this point? Just want to make sure everybody's getting a chance to
On this one,
weigh in.
I mean, I think Megan hit it on the head earlier when we were talking about the advantage for students, that this also just kind of shows that we're investing in the town, which is what all these points are kind of reiterating anyways.
Yeah.
I think Mike mentioned you're gonna spend $300 million anyway. Do you wanna fix one thing, or do you wanna build a new one, fix some things? If any of you ever, and I'll talk to Anna about this, but if any of you ever wanna go visit a school, we've got contacts in relatively new schools. Guilford has a new high school. We built, I think of it as new, but a model middle school. Fairfield just finished its high school. So there are places that you can go and look at and get, if you want to. You don't need to.
Yeah, I don't need to see, I mean, I know what they look like, I know how beautiful they are, so
But
I
you know,
certainly don't need to see that to make this decision.
So it's interesting, they got high-rise tables like they do in half the restaurants and bars in town. The schools do, that 4 kids can sit around a high table out in the lobbies.
That's at specs
Yep,
time.
yes.
I don't know what it is.
Mike, do you have anything you want to add?
It's exciting.
No, okay.
No, I'm just listening.
One
Okay.
other point was it's responsive to the request of the city to reduce operating expenses by reducing the total number of schools. Right, so that is another point that we could put on here, I assume. For the city would like the efficiency, I assume?
I'm personally less interested in signing up for the fact that the city said, we want you to close schools, and so now we're doing it. I am utterly unimpressed by that argument, and it has come up indirectly a few times in our conversations here, and every time it rubs the wrong way.
Yeah.
I find that, whatever the opposite of compelling is, I find that the opposite. I think the idea of looking for efficiencies as just a realistic part of what we need to do as a district going forward makes perfect sense. I personally don't give a darn what the city thinks we should do about the number of schools that we have and making that be the forcing function to drive our choices.
The efficiency piece, I think, is the
Yeah.
driver, not the number of schools necessarily. I mean, I
Regardless
think-
of what they think we should do about that, that's not the driver for me.
Thank you.
And I've said this before too, the population, the citizens know that we have declining, now stable enrollment, and we still have the same number of buildings we've had all along. So they know something needs to be done based on the number of students we're now at. So something, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Adam, was that what you were going to say?
I was going to say, the community is very focused on increasing opportunities too, so
Mhm.
just to kind of tie in with what Lauren was saying about efficiencies and all that, and closing buildings and all that. The community is just really focused on making sure that we can provide ample opportunities. So, you know, focusing on this, if it increases the amount of opportunities, is, you know, kind of appeasing the community as well.
Well, that's the indirect benefit of finding efficiencies, is that you can redirect your dollars, your operating dollars, to more opportunities, and that if you have efficient use of buildings, fewer spaces, you don't have to drag things out across as many buildings, so it creates that efficiency in and of itself. So it's all kind of interconnected.
May I ask a data question? We had talked about other kinds of data that we still wanted to have, or questions that we still had. I actually do have a piece that I don't know the answer on personally, others might already. But it also stood out to me from the community conversation where some of the individuals, was specific to our room, who were talking about being okay with closing certain buildings. It was almost being okay with that was predicated on what the building would be used for next.
Yeah.
They were okay closing a building if that site was going to become X, Y, or Z. They were not okay with closing a building if that site was going to become A, B, or C.
So we can't say that at this point, if that's your
No,
question.
that is not my question. My question is, what is the process of what happens next? If we were to close a building, what happens to that site, that location, that land?
It goes to the city.
Immediately, or do we have the opportunity to decide something else that is a public school
Oh, we can use
purpose?
it, yes. When we're done with it, it goes to the city.
Right, so
yes.
if we decided to close a school, like for the elementaries, or
Yeah,
going
we
from
could
6 to 8,
repurpose it as
somewhere
something
there's a
else.
building. So we do have an opportunity to repurpose it as something before all of a sudden it's condos.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It can be, we can use it as swing space or storage
Well, but
or
we can-
others.
yeah,
We can use it as anything we want, but it's not, I think that's something that I wasn't necessarily clear on, and I think that was a misconception a lot of people have is, I mean, as we're, there are a lot of conspiracy theories we've all heard floating out around there of, we're just doing, the city wants us to do this so they can close some buildings so they can have
Yeah.
more space for more developments.
And I don't think that's a fair assumption. I mean, I think if there comes a time that we turn buildings over to the city, it's incumbent upon the community to say, well, we want input on what we're going to use that space for.
For sure, but my question was, in that process, there is an opportunity for us to do something with it before we just lose it completely.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Thank you, that was helpful.
I'm mindful of I think this has been a really helpful conversation, and I'm mindful of the time. I don't know that go ahead.
Let me make one process comment, facilitated process. Table the middle school. It's fraught with disagreements. If you decide to do this, do it, and then figure out the middle school. But right now, if you lump the middle school, 2 or 3, out there at the same time, I think you'll just wind up where you were 2 years ago and 3 years ago, or whenever you did it. It's a very difficult or controversial battle. If you decide this is the way you want to go, stick with one and do it first, and don't uncork this miasma of, no, we want to save this building, or no, we want to close that building. I think the more, a decision sometimes has to be reached. If Foran was suddenly free, it might change that decision. I think you need to focus as a group, and if I'm going to make any of this easier, and I don't know if I'm ever going to make it easier for you to decide, it would be focus on one thing at a time, get closure on it. And just table some of the other stuff or put it on hold for a while.
I don't know what a while means. I think we need to put forward an RFP that encompasses what we want to see ultimately, whether it's, giving us feedback on one concept, if we come up with a full concept, or 2. I think for efficiency's sake, we want one RFP with one firm who is looking at the total picture and giving us recommendations on process, timeline, what it's going to cost, all of that. And it may be that we ask for 1 high school and then 2 middle schools and then 3 middle schools. And what would it cost? What would be the recommendations if we were to have 2 middle schools? What would the recommendation be if we were to have 3 middle schools? I think we can. That's something we might be able to live with. And then down the road, once all of that data is digested by the board at the time, they make that decision how to go. I think that's, I do think that it's not an efficient use of money to parse out everything and do it independently. I think we need to look at things as a group. So, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't think that the community would be comfortable with that either.
Yeah.
I think based on the conversations that we've had, that
I'm sorry, what would they not be comfortable with? I missed the.
just parsing it out, first looking at one high school, then going to the middle school, then going to the elementary school. I think we have to look at the whole thing at one time.
Can we maybe get consensus on that from everyone in terms of that piece?
Yeah, I think the
What's the
community is
question?
expecting some solid directions.
I think on
Track
the-
A, track B.
On the middle school piece, independent of picking which sites they would be, we should do at least what are the advantages and disadvantages of 2 versus 3, independent of what schools would stay or go. I think that gives at least a, and then the RFP would kind of help us, you know.
Right, I don't disagree with that either. I mean, and I think that kind of plays into Megan's earlier question
Yeah.
about, you know, what is, you know, middle school programming? What is that? And not the specifics of programming, but, you know, what are the challenges of, or benefits of 2 versus 3,
Right.
which is what we have now.
So we've done some of that, and we can gather that information. Do you want to spend a few more minutes on that tonight, or do you want to make that the next time, or?
Next time.
Let's decide, how about we decide, are we all comfortable with a concept? Or 2?
I'm comfortable personally, for me, I am currently comfortable pursuing 2 tracks within the RFP. I am not personally comfortable narrowing it down to one of those 2 options prior to that RFP data.
Would you do the 1, would you do 1, 2, 6, 1, 3, 6?
I would do 1, 2, for me, what makes sense is a 1, 2, 6 or a 2, 3, 6.
Say that again?
A 1, 2, 6 or a 2, 3, 6.
And I think, I mean, one thing that we have heard is that notion that we should at least have a comparison of the cost of one new high school versus the cost to renovate the 2 that we have.
Yeah.
And is it renovate, or is it really thinking about building new at some point? Because those are
We could-
old schools.
Renovate law, really?
Renovate, okay, then I'll zip my lips.
No, I mean, I'll go back 45 minutes, like,
Yeah.
we're just
Well, by the same
waiting
token-
for a problem to happen at law.
By the same
We're
token,
gonna have
I
to gut
remember,
it.
you know, sitting
You're
in
gonna have to gut it.
my room in Foran for the community conversation with those cardboard walls that, you know, I didn't really realize existed,
Yep.
the dividers, and we could hear exactly what's going on in the next room,
mean,
so
the-
it was difficult.
The
but-
only thing everyone completely agrees on is there's an appetite for change.
Yes.
Which does not necessarily mean an appetite for a new footprint. It means an appetite for buildings that actually look like they have been built this century.
Right.
And not a year, 150 years ago. I think that to me is where the appetite for change really comes from. So it would, to me, it would be looking at almost redoing whatever that looks like, the 2, if we kept the 2.
For clarification, Ms. Mahler, so not just looking like they're built in this 21st century,
But
that,
actually being built.
yeah, like, and behind the walls where the guts are just aging.
Yes, we can't just keep replacing the guts. We
Yeah.
can't just keep repainting that car
Right, yep.
that we talked about, changing the tires now and then. We need a new car.
I think one of the things that sticks out to me every time is we go to Pumpkin and we go into this beautiful renovation. And then we walk down the hall and the ceiling's like 2 feet from your head. And we heard about how it was almost impossible to tie the fire alarm into the new system, and we had just a...
Well, same at West Shore.
Right,
You
it's true
go
at
to
every
the
single
second
one.
floor, West Shore, you feel like you've just stepped back in time, but yet the first floor is gorge, right? Like,
That's what you did.
that's what we keep doing.
Could we maybe take 10 or 15 minutes to talk about the middle school piece while we're here?
Sure.
What about it?
We've had later meetings.
It's a similar thing, similar to what we just did, I think.
If Foran is okay, that can answer some of your issue around middle, at least temporarily. Some of the issue could go to fall.
So, I mean, thinking about economic feasibility and advantages for students, what's best for the school system, what's best for the city, what's best for, well, the student, I said the students, but greatest number of students.
From a parity perspective, Harborside lacks, for instance, the band room that is available in East Shore, West Shore. So Harborside, you know, we also talked about with Harborside, you know, that whole frontage to the street, what might an addition going, you know, in the front of the building look like, and what would that cost be? Because we know that Harborside doesn't serve the students well as the other two because of facilities that are given to them. So band is an example, but the basement is an issue. It has flooded before.
So parity.
Parity, yes, and if we were to build on Harborside, keep it, what does that even look like?
It would have to be rebuilt.
Rebuilt.
Yeah, it would have to be a new school, not
Take it down,
renovated, yeah.
I'm sorry, say that again.
It would have to be new. I will full out put out there, I don't think it's a good use of resources to invest $40 million in a renovation. If we were gonna make any decision that involved a Harborside, it would be a new school. I don't think that there's any use in spending $40–50 million on a school that is that was built as an elementary school that can't meet the needs currently.
Yeah,
Okay,
would be a rebuild.
that's what you'd have as a build new, knock down, build new.
I think that all of the same questions in terms of new buildings are completely the same at middle school level in terms of parity, air conditioning, investing in the community, all of those. Those things don't change. I think where it comes into is just the number of students in the buildings and how that can affect from 2 to 3. That is like the part that's kind of missing, and we've discussed is I don't know if we can support the program we have with too small of classes. And I know we've had many discussions about these things, and so I went to Harborside as a middle school student. 6th, 7th, and 8th. There were at least 100, I think close to 200 kids in my graduating class in each one of those years. There's a very different class from now where I think it's 125 is in each class. And we didn't do anything. Like, we literally went to class. We moved around.
We built electives.
Yeah, we had no electives. We built little toothpick bridges with Mr. Fetterman in 8th grade. Like, that's what we did. We didn't have what's at West Shore with the things. And I don't know if it's possible to have those at 3 schools with the population that we are occurring. And I'm not saying that because I'm saying that because I just don't know the answer to that question. I'm not saying I agree with 2 or 3. I'm leaning 2, and I'm not even saying that it's Harborside, because with the information from the RFP, it could come back that Harborside's a better place to build than East Shore or West Shore. Like, we keep having this conversation about Harborside closing, but that doesn't mean that Harborside wouldn't be replaced. Like, we just don't have that knowledge, I think, now.
I think that, I agree that many of the things that we have for one, in terms of, will just carry over to a middle school. But I agree with Megan that it's, I mean, the thing that we've started to hear is that, you know, we're having to collapse elective classes because there's only 6, I mean, we heard that at the last meeting, there's only 6 kids in the class. We just cannot support, I don't think we can support the programming that we have envisioned for middle school, and this is something that's been in the works for 10 years now in terms of 6-12 continual career pathways. We just can't support that in 3 buildings. And if we want to have those robust options, I think we have to have a more efficient way to do it, which for me would go down to 2 buildings.
I agree.
And I think that, I don't think increasing the size of the school by 50% it's not as dramatic as increasing the high school by 100%, which is what would happen with one high school. The schools, we've had 600 kids in our high schools traditionally, in middle schools. I mean, that's how many were in, when my kids went through school. There were 600 in each of the middle schools. So, again, it's doable if you have the supports in place to, so all those same arguments, I think, carry forward to middle school, including that, which is the point that this individual that I referenced earlier was making, that he was talking about middle school, that, you know, the larger student body gives more opportunities to make friends and to find your people. So I think that can, what Ms. Mahler said she was thinking in terms of high school also holds true for middle school.
I feel like I've heard a different presentation tonight about two, means that one of the two could be in the location of Harborside.
It could be anywhere. We're
Yeah,
not saying
I
where
know,
it could be.
I know, but
It's
I
just
just-
2 versus
I had not
3.
heard that.
I
The
think
number.
it's independent of site.
Right, it's
Yeah.
just
We
the
have
number
to-
of schools that we're talking about. It's not necessarily where they are or what they are. They could be 2 totally different schools.
I'm just looking.
Anybody down here?
I know we've heard them at other times, but I'm not seeing any positives for 3 right now.
I still support 3, I'm just tired. You guys didn't think that was possible. You've done it, wore me down tonight. I think in terms of the 3, there are a lot of benefits if we look not just to the structure of the programming. There are 2 pieces that aren't up here right now that I think are benefits to keeping the 3. There are others, but there's 2 that I think we haven't touched on that are worth touching on right now at 9:27. One is that this, to me, is where the interconnection piece comes from. That I still feel very strongly that 2 is the wrong answer if there are going to be 2 high schools. So I think 3 has the benefit of that. I don't know how you capture that piece, but I think in terms of school process flow, moving, whatever we call that, I'm sure I'd have a word for it if it was 3 hours ago. But I think that that is an interconnection piece that to me is incredibly important. And I think the other, that if there's 2 high schools, there need to be 3 middle schools so that kids aren't locked into tracks for 7 years. I think that the other piece that isn't there is the benefit to the community, the city, of having, this isn't necessarily to the points that we've raised tonight, if we're being site agnostic, this has more to do with the location and having a school, having a presence, having a district footprint that is in the downtown is something that is a very Milford-specific attribute. And I think that is, whether other schools do that, whether other towns do that or not, I think that here in Milford, that is something that is, it's an identifier, it's an identity piece. I think it's important for who we are as a town, that we not just shuttle all of our kids up north to one high school or east and west to 2 middle schools, and then everybody, you know, lives in their high rises and plays downtown. Like, I think having that integrated across the whole of the city is actually a very Milford-specific benefit to having, in this case, it goes on the 3 column, but to having a school in that location.
I also feel that, obviously, the opportunity for the students is pretty pivotal in this whole conversation. I feel like if the opportunities aren't affected too greatly, we're talking about the reputation of the town, you know, closing down a middle school for the sake of, and not to downplay the voice and choice aspect, but for the sake of saving maybe 10 classes, closing down a whole middle school, I don't think it's going to be a great look for Milford, especially with a lot of the community members coming out, specifically about Harborside, but we can ignore which school might end up closing based on the sites and all that. But I just think keeping all 3, assuming programming doesn't take too hard of a hit, is a better piece of reputation for Milford.
And we do have to balance those things across programming and others, and I think there is a greater value to keeping a school at that location than there is to, as we said last time, keeping like class number 3 that has 8 kids instead of 12 kids, and if we close this whole big school, now you could have 12 kids, and therefore it's better. To me, that's not a persuasive side argument.
So I think this goes back again to Megan's earlier comment about having some more information on that. So is that something that people feel we should have before we come to a conceptual agreement, or not? In terms of having administration give us some feedback on that.
You mean on what programs would be available?
No, on how the enrollment or the buildings suit how the enrollment comes into play.
I think it goes to our vision, because we've had this conversation about the last 10 years ago, we had a community conversation similar to this, a long-term facility plan, and what was really taken away was career pathways for students. And we have been attempting to implement those for many years. And from my last reading of the update, it seems that we have shuttered those opportunities, and we'll have to limit them because of various issues. And so I think the question is what is the vision for middle school, and how does it affect our later high school in terms of opportunities for children? And is it possible in 3 schools? Is it possible in 2 schools? I do think we need to have efficiency questions, because if it's 8 kids across 3 schools, I don't think we can make the argument that we can even have those classes. So all the children lose out, not just the students at one school.
I want to make sure I'm really hearing and capturing what you're saying, because you don't feel like you've already had that information from the administration?
I don't think,
You feel like
I to some extent, I do feel like it, but I also don't think it's a clear conversation, because there's not enough of a model of what is the team model, what do we want for middle school level programming. We hear voice and choice, but where is it now? And I think that's for as much as our benefit, it's also for the community's benefit, because
I think there's also a limitation on any programming. Voice and choice, I agree, is a priority, and it's important, and it's what we've been working towards and building towards. But that doesn't mean unlimited choice forever and ever.
No.
Eventually, there comes a limitation of the choice, and that's okay, because eventually, the priority of building as much choice as possible runs up against other priorities that matter also. And in my mind, for me, keeping the 3 middle school models, or keeping a school that is in that location for those reasons that we talked about, that is something that I am comfortable having be a limiting factor on unlimited voice and choice. Like, you can't just pick anything you want and the entire district rearranges so you can do it. That's not how it's supposed to work.
Well, I don't think anybody has said unlimited, but I think there's...
No, but it's conceptually, since that's what we're talking about right now, and theoretically, that to me is what we're basically saying, that we might have to actually limit somebody's choice, so we should close an entire school.
You're saying the advantages of 2 don't outweigh the disadvantages?
Not in that, I don't find that to be a particularly compelling part of the argument for we should close a school so that we can offer even more voice and choice, but it has to end, my point is that it has to end somewhere, and I think it ends when we start closing schools in order to enable additions.
And
Can I?
two, also...
Yeah, if I'm incorrect on something or not
No,
factual,
not
please.
incorrect. Just want to add value to that, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
So just want to make sure that we're using the phrase voice and choice appropriately here, that voice and choice sounds like something fun and optional, but what we're trying to build is actual career exploration starting in the middle school, and that's not just fun stuff. And we have had to roll back on our music and our art voice and choice because of those numbers that you even quoted, Ms. Mahler, like 8 and 10 kids. We've had to roll back on music options, and I think we're doing that next year in art, but don't want to float out scary things yet. And we were able to turn one of our trimesters into a pre-engineering manufacturing, if you remember that from last year. So we did it instead of choice change this year in tech ed. But to be honest, launching some of this exploratory career pathway, which we coined voice and choice, is hard to launch right now. Because we are being sensitive to enrollment. And I think it was at the second community conversation that a parent got up and said, we know the numbers at the middle school are really low. So it's not a secret that the class sizes are really small at the middle school. And we're even making an adjustment in FTEs in this upcoming budget, as you remember. So I don't want to give the impression that we're doing voice and choice for fun. There is an intention and a purpose to that. And actually, there isn't a lot that we're offering our middle schoolers yet. So we're not even close to the unlimited options arena. Like, if that was true, be like, all right, well, we'll give some, and we'll take a look at enrollment and see what career pathways are under-enrolled, over-enrolled, et cetera. But, right, Mr. Autieri?
Yeah, I think there's an intentionality to what we're trying to do with the courses at the middle school. So thinking about bridging the career pathways down to the middle school to start kids early. And obviously, that we'd be responsive to the courses. I mean, there's time where a course may not be popular anymore, or we may see need for the students that we shift or we build a new course and it's replaced. So I think it's constantly in flux, and it's responsive to the needs of the community, to what we're seeing in career trends that mirror what we're doing with the students at the high school. So to Dr. Kataya's point, it's not just we're putting out a bunch of electives and there's all these things for kids to choose. It's done with a lot of intentionality, and we're looking at the data behind it to make sure that what we offer to students is getting them set, giving that foothold for high school. So,
thank you for that clarification. That's important, so thank you.
And what we could do is actually provide you with the list, and I can't even describe it right now if it's short or long, and we won't, we'll wait. And maybe an upcoming communication to the board as to what does that currently look like. So I think maybe floating out what's the current state of that. And I think I'm hearing from a couple of board members, while we do not want to get into the ed spec world, I agree with that. Like, do you even have a common understanding of when Steve and I say we'd like to encourage career exploration earlier, starting in like 7th grade minimally, maybe tinkering in 6th? Do we even have a common understanding of what that means? Because I think that this is a big hinge point on the administration side. We'd love to expand that. We're having a hard time getting it started and even collapsing to the paths that we've tried to start. So maybe that's what you guys are hinting at, as to better understanding that without stepping over into ed spec world.
Agree.
Yeah, I'd love to understand that.
Yeah, because for
myself.
me,
Yeah.
if that is in danger of getting put to bed because we cannot support it across 3 buildings, to me, that's a big deal. It's something we've been working on for 10 years, and we've seen enrollment go down enough so that if it's impeding on that, I think that's a valid consideration. So,
and I do think you guys noted on the one high school, like the real benefit to the city. Wow, you have a state-of-the-art high school that is made for preparing kids for college and careers. Instead of us retrofitting a room for an esports arena, right? We're going to take it right out of the pot. And same thing with our early childhood that we're going to do at Foran High, right? I think, thinking ahead to families who are going to be shopping for a house, they're going to be looking for even middle schools that are going to put kids on that trajectory, right? So if you're talking about attraction, reputation to the city, imagine the selling point of we do career exploration starting in 7th grade, and we have the facility to support that, right? So I think that would be a huge benefit, you taking a look at state-of-the-art buildings at the middle and high that are focused on preparing kids to launch.
So do we need this is a general question, do we need this kind of information before we can come up with a plan for 1 or 2 concepts to begin working on? I feel like we could talk about, I'm not trying to shut down any conversation, but I feel like we could talk about the middle school question for hours and hours and hours. And do we have a desire to move something concrete forward? Or is it still too early to do that?
Oh, I think it's too, I think we're looking, I mean, for me, I think moving something concrete forward comes
conceptually
next month. Not
Okay.
now, not now. I mean, you can't spring that on people. You have to have a plan.
Well, no, it just,
Not at 9:42.
It seemed that when we began this process this evening, that there was a desire for us to agree upon a concept or not.
I don't.
I don't want to rush us at all in the process,
Moving us,
but.
see if we can move towards more consensus, but I don't think there was any intent to actually.
By May.
Okay.
By May.
Yeah, I think
Outcome by May, yeah.
this in black and white, when you summarize this and give this to us at the next one, I think it can be, and we'll have a couple days, when the materials are, and to digest it, because right now I'm doing this, right? I think I have a trajectory in my head of what I want to do based on what I'm hearing, but now I want to see it sort of in black and white. So it's just like, okay, here's the summary of what we just did, and I think it'll sort of come together a little more, at least for me.
And I think that information might help us a little bit more with the vision, visioning, whatever.
I mean, the other factor about 2 is that you need 2 additions, right?
Yeah.
Well,
It could be new.
Or
Could be
anything.
2 new
Or
buildings.
new
Could be-
schools, right? Yeah.
I think that comes back to the question of the RFP. All of this comes back to
Right.
location and cost.
102 million for a new middle school is what the number was.
According to Mr. Stein, if you used his model, it would be an additional 20,000 square feet regardless of the 2 schools that you picked to expand. Because
If
each
you
one of the
picked those
3.
2 schools to expand and didn't choose to put one of your middle schools in the middle and rebuild.
Say it again?
We're school agnostic. What you just said assumed that we were keeping 2 middle schools and closing Harborside.
No, I think if you close any one of the 3 was my point, because all 3 were about 20,000 short.
Just pure square footage.
I don't think we can just add 20,000 feet to Harborside and call it a day.
Why not?
Because the whole building needs to be rebuilt. We'll just
No,
build
but
a
if you
bigger-
were going down that route,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm just making the factual point that you're 20,000 square feet of any one of the 3 buildings.
I'm just putting new space required. That's,
Okay.
And
We know what you
middle
mean.
was 102, was the estimate.
all right. I think we've about hit the wall.
Yes.
You
We
did
still
talk
have
about
2
next
items
steps,
of
didn't you?
business on our.
Can we
business
clarify
agenda.
next steps?
We have 1 item on next steps right now. Are there other things that people would like us to work on? We'll summarize this conversation and get that to you, right?
I really hope we can start next time with where you were tonight and not go backward. I hope we can get to the point of saying, okay, if you do what I think we're mostly saying, what's the next thing then? And I think the 20,000 square feet at $1,000 a square foot is something that financially might save, but I suggest to begin with, table the middle school for that.
Can we go on to our business agenda?
If you close one of those schools before the high school's ready, whether it's one high school or just a replacement for law, you got a problem of spending a whole lot of money on old middle schools. So at least, one case is about land, the other case might be about money and putting additions on old buildings.
So any other next steps? Is that what you meant? Just finish the?
Oh, we still have a couple of items on our business agenda that we have to.
But Dr.
before we
Pataya, you
adjourn.
wanted next steps, or do you?
I just
clear
want to
on-
make sure
We're clear.
pardon me, all clear on what are the next steps. Basically, I would need to know what my marching orders are, if any.
That, first, the green piece there.
Opportunities for middle.
Or you were just talking about
It's the thing we were just talking about, how you were gonna,
Rewind.
it's the thing we just
What we were
talked
just
about that you were
talking
gonna
about.
educate us
Right,
on.
that you-
Yeah.
So we're going to provide info on that.
Yes.
How are we gonna
Ms.
prepare
Glennon,
them to launch from 7th?
You and I will figure out how that happens? Okay.
Is there anything else?
That's it.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So we have just two quick items on our agenda, consent agenda. A motion for your consent agenda.
Yeah, motion to approve the February 10th, 2025 business meeting minutes and February 24th, 2025 committee of the whole minutes.
Your second?
I have a comment.
What?
I have a comment.
On what?
On the second board meeting, it's a pet peeve.
I know, but you can't, it's on the consent agenda, we don't have discussion.
Oh, we don't?
No, you would have had to have asked to have it taken off. What, is it just a typographical thing?
Just a typographical error, it's just a personal pet peeve of my own.
Okay.
On the second meeting, on the 24th,
Uh-huh.
on the adjournment, can you spell my name right?
I'm
It's
sorry.
spelled right everywhere else.
Okay.
It's a pet peeve with a friend
All
or
right, so
family.
that's a
She
housekeeping
cannot
item.
use the right
Okay.
name. It just pisses me off.
Is there, all
I'll
in
second the
favor?
motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, unanimous.
Sorry, it's just,
That's okay. Any board comment? Susical was wonderful. So that's it. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
second.
Any opposed to adjourning at 9:47? Then we're adjourned. Thank you.
Spelling Scott's name correctly.
Thank you.
Yes. I put an A instead of an E.